welcome everybody. Welcome to meeting number 105 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, fondly known, of course, as the Mighty Ogo. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, October 17, 2022, the committee is meeting to consider matters related to the ArriveCAN application. Reminder, please, everyone, not to put your earpieces next to the microphones as it causes feedback and potential injury to our valued interpreters. Welcome back, Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano. I understand we'll start with an opening statement from yourself, Mr. McDonald. Please go ahead, sir.
Members of the committee, Canadians have every right to know about ArriveCAN, its cost, and its value. Nous avons témoigné pour la première fois.
We testified for the first time in November and once again today. On the 7th of November, we testified before you and told the truth, not our version of the truth, but the truth and nothing but the truth.
Asked questions by members. Our testimony and evidence contradicted several previous witnesses. We testified that current and former CBSA senior executives had misled Parliament. Just 10 days after our testimony, the CBSA initiated an investigation of Mr. Utano and I, based on a complaint that had been filed a year before in 2022. The CBSA then expanded hastily to look for anything throughout our entire tenure at the CBSA that could demonstrate a hint of misconduct. In December 2023, without interviewing us or a single witness, the CBSA had prepared a report called the Preliminary Statement of Facts. The reality is, this document is nothing more than a collection of baseless accusations, unsupported by any corroborating evidence, accusations of wrongdoing, supported by cherry-picked emails and calendar entries. It should be called the Preliminary Statement of Falsehoods. This was not given to us until MPs received it. We were always willing to participate in CBSA's investigation. However, we didn't even know what we were accused of. We requested disclosure of the Bottler complaint. The CBSA refused. In any event, no one was interviewed, and the CBSA told us we had to give them an answer by January 5th. This is a red herring. The CBSA had already crafted the document by December 18th and 19th and sent it to our employers. It is very troubling to me that the CBSA states that Bottler, the author of the complaint, demanded a contract in exchange for creating these allegations. Even more, to participate in the investigation, the CBSA says that Bottler demanded another contract. I note that the CBSA acknowledged that the Bottler complaint was mostly about a breakdown in their own business relationships and was a result of a misunderstanding of procurement practices. This has nothing to do with ArriveCAN. The entire preliminary statement of falsehood is designed to paint us in the worst possible light. Every single allegation, false, wrong, and taken out of context. Every single one. They can all be addressed with supporting evidence. You see, unlike the others, we never deleted anything because we didn't have anything to hide. But the extent to which the emails and calendar entries are manipulated is incredible. One example that shows how ridiculous the preliminary statement of falsehoods is, based on a single calendar entry for a family dinner. The CBSA concluded that I had a close personal relationship with a consultant because the contractor shares the same name as my own mother. Now, only based on the preliminary statement of falsehood, designed to torpedo my career, my credibility, by false claims, my employer has suspended me without pay, without even first attempting to have a discussion with me. I am named in the press repeatedly, often with the suggestion that I did something wrong. Just 2 days ago, the Prime Minister himself stood in front of the national media and said it was clear that civil servants committed misconduct, there are investigations, and there will be consequences. This comes after I simply told the truth and informed this committee that I did not make the selection of GC strategies, that in fact they were not my recommended choice, and I have already provided evidence to my testimony previously. The Auditor General has said that there was a glaring disregard for management principles. I have always adhered to the core principles and processes and procedures, including closely tracking and managing the costs of ArriveCAN. In fact, I delivered a detailed costing of $6.3 million to my colleague DGs and my supervisor Min Doan just prior to my departure. I'll just point out to this committee that the Auditor General's report reflected exactly $6.3 million. I'm concerned that the complaints come from people who tried to extort contracts from the Government of Canada. I'm very concerned that colleagues of mine have been coerced to take part in this investigation against their will. I'm very concerned that thousands of emails have been deleted to hide the truth. The CBSA is delaying access to information requests that I need to defend myself, and now the Prime Minister has pronounced guilt to the entire country. Je suis prêt à répondre à toutes les questions.
I'm willing and able to respond to all committee members' questions, and I'm going to respect the principles of truth and transparency.
Parliamentary privilege has not protected us as we are now facing reprisals. For the record, I have served in the civil service for 23 years, and until now, my career stood unblemished. Yet, I am suspended without pay based on untested, unproven, and false allegations. We have had to turn to the court to ensure fairness. We testify here looking for the same. The journey ahead may be challenging, but I am committed to facing it with unwavering honesty and integrity. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Utano, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. We appeared before you on November 7th, 2023, and told the truth. We have and will continue to cooperate with Parliament and speak truthfully. I echo everything Mr. McDonald said in his opening statement, but will add the following. I was the Executive Director that became the Acting Director General of Border Technologies Innovation Directorate in May of 2021 after Mr. McDonald left for Health Canada. We were responsible for the execution and technical delivery of the ArriveCAN application. What we were not responsible for. We were not responsible for signing contracts as we did not have contracting authorities. We were not responsible for approving budgets for ArriveCAN. We were not responsible for selecting GC strategies to work in ArriveCAN. This was Min Doan's and the President's decision. We were not responsible for, nor did we have the mandate for many of the flaws the OAG had enumerated in their report. I have worked in public safety my entire career, for over 20 years, with an unblemished record. I started at the RCMP, working on highly sensitive files with a top secret security clearance. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a straight shooter. I take offense to what the CBSA has done to us after all we did was speak the truth. There have been absurd suggestions of bribery. Have a look at this. Is this bribery? Does this committee really think I can be bribed for a $17 knapsack? Every single person who worked on ArriveCAN was offered this souvenir. And this bag was disclosed to the Values and Ethics Office of the CBSA, as well as our Vice President's office. CBSA is punishing us because we told the truth. Because we told this committee they have been misled by senior officials from CBSA. I question and highlight why CBSA, Health Canada, and the Canada Revenue Agency are working in concert to punish us. To note, both Health Canada and the CRA did not want to participate in the CBSA investigation, yet they supported suspending us anyways. I'm now questioning even more why the Prime Minister has publicly pronounced guilt and has said there will be consequences when after more than a year, the RCMP has not investigated. I'm questioning the investigation as there is clear evidence of bias and the report is tainted and flawed. The very starting point is problematic. The person who conducted this investigation and crafted the report was himself involved in the original vetting process of Butler AI in late 2020. And who is Butler AI? The ones that wrote to the CBSA back in October 2022, saying that if you're concerned about misconduct, look no further, Butler has an answer. Butler prepared a report, and they specifically said they would only share it in exchange for a contract. Furthermore, I find it interesting, in October of 2023, they told this same committee that the CBSA was at risk of extortion. And a month later, as CBSA has indicated, Butler AI would participate in an interview only if they are given a contract for their services. Extortion. Really? I am left to question what is really happening here. There are people charged with criminal offenses who are suspended with pay. We were suspended without pay, based on unsubstantiated allegations and while on medical leave. In the employment world, this is just shy of capital punishment. All we did was expose the fact that parliamentarians have been misled. We didn't just say so, we provided evidence. And on that note, just like the bag, we have evidence that every one of the allegations raised in the report are false, misleading, or taken out of context. Had the CBSA conducted this investigation leading to the creation of these reports professionally and honestly, they would have insisted on interviewing witnesses, especially us. And looking at the evidence, instead they crafted a document that was designed to show us in the worst possible light, and they were successful. As a result of these reports, our security clearances have been pulled and we are suspended without pay. I understand that there are some members concerned that we spoke to members of this committee when we were contacted. But understand, we were trying to defend ourselves against the CBSA and our home departments, all three of which have the resources of the federal government targeting us. We are not even drawing a salary. Of course, we spoke to a committee member when they reached out, as we would have to any committee member who would have showed an interest. We've also had to turn to the court because the CBSA will not cooperate and disclose key information required to defend ourselves. The CBSA has acted unfairly, continues to act in bad faith, and have created a fabrication to distance themselves from any accountability. I am happy to take any of your questions. In closing, isn't it ironic that the people that are pointing fingers are the ones with the dirtiest hands? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with Mr. Barrett, please, for 6 minutes.
In the Auditor General's report, she said, quote, "We found situations where agency employees were involved in the ArriveCAN project, were invited by vendors to dinners and other activities," end quote. Mr. McDonald, were you invited to dinners, meals, or other activities by any ArriveCAN vendors? Yes or no, please.
If I was invited to any dinners or activities with vendors, I disclosed it to my supervisor.
Question, sir. The question was, and I'll repeat it for you, were you invited?
I'm telling you the truth. I had been invited, but
Okay, that's a yes. Mr. Rotano, were you invited to dinners, meals, or other activities by ArriveCAN vendors?
At the time during ArriveCAN, no. And if any...
Were you at any time, before or after the ArriveCAN project, at an event, meal, or activity with any of the vendors who were contracted by the Government of Canada to work on the ArriveCAN project?
So, Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. The short answer is I was at one dinner, and that was disclosed to my boss, and which at Mindone at the time. In fact, my boss was present. So any activities or suggestions of gifts or hospitalities were openly and transparently disclosed.
You waved a bag around when you were making your opening statement. Did you bring bottles for any whiskey tastings that you were a part of?
There are no bottles of whiskey tasting.
Did you participate in any whiskey tastings that were sponsored or paid for by vendors who were paid by the Government of Canada for the ArriveCAN scandal?
Mr. Chair, this is a perfect example where things are taken out of context. And if I could, I'd like to address the minister.
Series of questions. If you can answer the questions, I'm sure you'll have a time to get to those particular details. Did you accept free alcohol from vendors who worked on ArriveCAN? Yes or no?
In the plural, no. There was one Zoom call event.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, same question.
I had a package arrive at my house.
What was in the package?
There were little vials of whiskey.
Vials of whiskey.
Yes.
Okay.
These were after contracts were in
these
place.
Would be the size that you'd get at a hotel or on an airplane?
Smaller.
Okay. And how many bottles?
4 or 5.
Like the bag. These were disclosed. What was the name of the professional standards office that you referenced, Mr. Rutano?
That was the Values and Ethics Office of the
Did you
CBSA.
disclose to the Values and Ethics Office your participation in and consumption of these products that were provided to you by a vendor who had been paid $20 million for work on this project.
So the disclosure happened to our VP on
So why-
multiple occasions, as
why-
per the policy.
So why did the bag get disclosed but not the free drinks?
The bags were asked in advance, and we were asked if it was acceptable, and we took the steps and procedures ahead of time because we were aware of it ahead of time. The allegations and the development of this report
you attended-
insinuates that
so
we
you-
didn't follow procedures. We did, sir.
Did you eat meals, snacks, or consume beverages at any time that were paid for by these vendors? And if so, which vendors?
You're asking me? Yeah. So we did consume a shared platter. I had a few nachos and a couple of chicken wings and half a beer.
You know the date?
I don't have the date exactly in my
Can you
mind.
undertake to provide the date to the
It
committee?
was it would have been after we were allowed to.
Sir, I'll let you check your records and nail that down. Provide it to the committee, along with the names of anyone else who was in attendance. Mr. McDonald, same question to you, please.
I think I had 3 zucchini sticks.
Same
and
event?
half of a beer. Same event.
Only time that you shared a meal that was paid for.
Allegations that there were dinners. Those dinners were not necessarily vendor-oriented dinners or paid for by the dinners, and so that's why I'm answering the question.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I haven't
paid for my
asked,
own meals.
Yeah, I haven't asked a question about that, but you did attend dinners with them, is what you're saying.
I have attended dinners with different vendors over the last 3 years that were disclosed per the policy to my supervisor.
Okay. It's interesting to me that the bag was disclosed to a professional standards office, but the free drinks and food were not. Mr. McDonald, are you being investigated by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police?
I don't believe that I am. I haven't been contacted by the RCMP, and I think even the statement of facts shows that the
Same question to you,
CBSA
Mr.
says
O'Tonnell,
themselves
please.
that I didn't do anything.
Mr. O'Tonnell.
Same. I have not been contacted. I'm not aware of any being under any investigation.
So the Auditor General says the RCMP is investigating certain individuals pertaining to ethics and conflicts of interest. The Auditor General said so herself. Do you have any idea who is being investigated?
I'm not aware of who's being
Mr.
investigated.
McDonald, same question.
I'm not aware of anybody that's being investigated.
So there's millions of dollars being passed around. A vendor was allowed to write their own contract for CBSA. It doesn't make sense that some whiskey or meals or zucchini sticks would be sufficient in terms of influence. Do you know of any other individuals who work for the Government of Canada who received any material benefit from vendors that you can share with us today?
I'll start. Maybe I'm not aware of any. Certainly, when I was at the CBSA, as I testified last time, I did not see any wrongdoing.
Same question, Mr. O'Tonnell.
Exactly the same. I'm not aware of anybody who's received any sort of gifts or hospitality that are influenced them or influenced their actions.
Thanks, Barrett. Ms. Atwin, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us again today. Mr. McDonald, I'll start with you. You mentioned in your opening statement that there was a 2022 complaint that you believe initiated the review process. Can you provide any insight on what was the subject matter of that complaint?
I wish I could to this committee. I wish I could explain. We've asked the CBSA a number of times to provide the information from the Bottler complaint, and it's been completely withheld. I really wish that we could understand. I know that Bottler's gone on TV and online a lot and talked about it, so I believe it was sent to Ms. O'Gorman and a bunch of other people, but they're holding on to it pretty tight and won't allow us to see it.
Okay. You also mentioned that some of your colleagues are being coerced to participate in the investigation. Can you further explain that or clarify that for us?
Sure. In the document itself, it says that there are 6 people who were invited to participate as witnesses. One of those people initially, as I understand it, rejected the offer to participate, which was her right, and certain steps were taken to pressure her into participating. I have some information around it, but not a lot, due to the fact that anybody who participates needs to sign a non-disclosure, and so they won't even talk to us anymore.
Okay. And a lot of what we're seeing out of the Auditor General's report with regards to kind of missing information or timesheets or invoices that would have been approved that didn't have, supporting documentation or again the required information. So you were not the one to authorize those tasks or to sign off on these timesheets or invoices that were incomplete.
That's a great question. I hope I can enlighten the committee a little bit. We never had the authority to put in contracts. We never had the authority to put the TAs in place. We had what was called a technical authority, so we could sign off on the scope of the task. I also want to mention we are not the finance group, so we don't have responsibility for invoicing, reconciliation, the overall financial system, the system of record. That would all be within the CFO group, within the procurement team, and within the finance branch. What we were responsible for was the technical delivery and execution. We did have managers who oversaw the consultants that worked on ArriveCan. They would have been responsible for signing off on the timesheets of the consultants. I believe they were all done in order. What would happen after that is the timesheets would go to the vendor. The vendor would reconcile that and submit an invoice. Once all the paperwork was submitted and it was in proper format, I was asked to sign, and then it would go to finance to sign off. So they would do the last verification to make sure that all of the tasks, all of the procedures were followed in order to sign off.
Well, thank you. And I mean, some of the biggest pieces of this, I guess some of the biggest frustration, especially for Canadians who've been following along, is the kind of ballooning of costs. And so can you just enlighten us, was there an original budget? Was there a number, a target that you were aware of, at an early stage, just to help us understand how it got so far, how it got to that kind of almost $60 million price tag?
Thanks for the question. Min Doan once said at the early onset of the pandemic that a rising tide floats all boats. And so at the onset of the pandemic, we were asked to digitize a form. The budget for that was about $50,000. When it went to building a mobile app and releasing it, the initial budget from a prototype perspective was about $400,000, as we've testified previously and showed evidence of. But there kept on being continuous change, and everybody started injecting their requirements. And not only were we dealing with the Public Health Agency, but we were dealing with the rest of the IT branch, and we were dealing with travelers, and we were dealing with commercials. So from my vantage point, there was never a budget allocated. However, I will point out there's been talk about an ATIP, and there's 780 pages in it. I've gone through it. There was known to the CFOs of FAC, of IRCC, and CBSA. They were able to recover $12.5 million from IRCC and FAC the second year after I was gone. And they actually put in the budget request for $25 million the third year. So, that's not far off from the $60 million when you add 6.3 plus 25 plus 25. The residual, I would suggest, is probably just other people putting their hands in the purse.
And who might those other people be, if you could enlighten us? If you're able to
sure,
share?
no problem. As an example, I think it was Service Canada. It was after my time, but Service Canada asked for about $8 million for a call center. I didn't validate those costs, but I would imagine they already have a call center since they're Service Canada. There were the IT operations team asking for new resources, but they didn't take on the operation. There were project managers, I'm sure, working against ArriveCan and being costed against it, but obviously the Auditor General found a glaring hole with project management. So, overall, the only thing I can say is these two guys weren't responsible for the $60 million budget or the oversight of it. And I'm really kind of incensed at the fact that the rest of the CBSAs tried to insulate themselves from their own accountabilities.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Utano, I just have about 10 seconds kind of ticking down now. Is there anything you wanted to add to Mr. Barrett's line of questioning there? I know he's short on time as well and cut you off a little bit about the timing of those whiskey tastings or dinners?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just
Real
quickly,
quick,
please.
The calendar items are and emails have been cherry-picked across 5 years, selected, and trying to do maximum damage in doing that compression of what our calendar items, where most times were not even attended. But I just want to reiterate, we followed the policy. We did disclose to our boss, as well as for those bags, specifically values and ethics. So we did follow the policy and code of conduct.
Thanks, Ms. Atwin. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Mr. MacDonald, in a letter directed to the committee last January, you wrote that when you appeared before the committee on the 7th of November 2023, and I'll just wait for you to put your earpiece in. So I'll start again. In a letter directed to the committee last January, you wrote that at your appearance before the committee on the 7th of November 2023, you informed us that we had been misled by senior officials, both current and previous, at the CBSA, insofar as who took the decision to award the ArriveCAN contract to GC Strategies. Who misled you or us?
Je vais essayer de parler en français.
I'll take a stab at it in French, Ms. Vignola, if I may. But as I said in November at my appearance before you, the decision to award the contract to GC Strategies was in fact the choice of my supervisor, Ming Dong. I read the letters that the CEO of the agency were drafted for the CEO of the agency. It was Ms. Ming Dong and Mr. Ostowski, and I wasn't aware of actually what transpired. A third factor I'd like to mention, if I may. The CIO's office asked that that letter be sent to the current CEO, Ms. O'Gorman. So I don't understand, given that the question was asked of the three officials, that none of them were able to respond to that specific question. It was unbelievable. Who do you think those people were trying to protect? That's a good question. I thought of it from a different angle. I was thinking that perhaps they were trying to hurt us because we were the ones that made the decision. But as you saw from Min Dong's testimony, the first time he appeared before you, he said he had nothing to do with this, that it was his team. And that's where the buck stopped. Question, I'm sorry to cut you off, but in your opinion, they're trying to protect themselves. Is that my takeaway from this? Well, of course, and if anything else transpired, I'm not aware of it. Question, why did those individuals try to protect themselves? For what specific purpose? Response, well, honestly, in light of all the facts and that you have before you, it would seem that decisions were made by the previous CEO, Ms. Osalski, and apparently there are a lot of people who objected to that. Min Dong and Kelly McJossie got promotions in a non-competitive process, and Min Dong received a bonus as the Chief Technology Officer for Canada. And Erin O'Gorman maintains that she didn't understand anything. She wasn't there, and yet she went to great lengths to change things, but she wasn't responsible. Question, well, so folks were trying to protect their positions. Is that correct? That's what I take away from this. Okay, so in the same letter, you refer to aggressive stratagems that were used vis-a-vis Mr. Utano. Why is it you that informed us of these pressure tactics and not Mr. Utano himself? And I'd like you to keep your earpiece in when I do take the floor, because things can get a tad complicated. Thank you very much for that. Now, Mr. McDonald, why is it you specifically who decided to clue us in to the pressure tactics levelled against Mr. Utano, please? Thank you, Ms. Vignola. I wrote the letter concerned to Ogle because I was at the end of my tether. Mr. Utano had been suspended without pay, and it was my thinking that that would happen to me as well. And the very next day, I received a letter stating that I was suspended without pay. Now, I'm the kind of person who always stands up for my own rights. And I went to great lengths to get my hands on the evidence and be transparent and honest before this committee. That's highly important. So basically, when you informed us of this, you were trying to raise a red flag and sound alarm bells regarding something that was likely to happen to you. So by protecting Mr. Utano, you were trying to avoid that both of you would avoid being suspended without pay. Is that correct? Well, not exactly. We received a letter in the wake of our testimony stating that the CBSA had opened an investigation. And at that point in time, we didn't know anything about that so-called preliminary statement of facts or what the CBSA had actually done to date. We didn't lay eyes on that document until you yourselves did. So, well, question. I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't have much time left. But you said that the document, the preliminary statement, that you didn't receive it at the time. But a member of this committee had the document, whereas no other member had the document. And that member said you were the one who gave him the document. So how do we reconcile those two the discrepancy in the relation of those facts? That's a good question. Well, apparently the CBSA, for the CBSA to send the letter to the clerk of the committee, they were supposed to send it to us first. And it was perhaps a couple of days after that that Mr. Brock asked to speak. He spoke with our counsel, and the report at that stage had not been submitted to members of this committee. There were only extracts that were submitted to the committee by way of demonstration that this document had not been professionally filled out. Well, it was a couple of pages, right, at the end of the day, these couple of lines. Well, our lawyer had an exchange with the member. It wasn't us. There were 300 pages, I believe, or more that were exchanged. So I can't give you any further insight to what I've just told you. But it was obviously, evidently, not the complete document.
Move on. Mr. Bachrach, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start, Mr. McDonald, with the claim that you were not interviewed as part of the CBSA investigation. And I believe, if I understand correctly, you stated that you were invited to be interviewed, however, only after the preliminary statement of fact had been sent to other people in the organization. Is that an accurate characterization of what you told the committee?
To set the record straight, we had a few exchanges between the time that I was notified of the investigation being opened after my testimony and the January 5th, which was the last one. Those exchanges happened with my counsel where we were asking for information and disclosure. CBSA refused to disclose any information at all. January 5th was the final warning that we got, where they said if we didn't do it, they were going to close the investigation, which is part of the reason why we went to the courts, was to make sure that the CBSA couldn't close the investigation. But as we found out through the disclosure of the document, which only happened because it was a production order from this committee, the CBSA had to share it with us. Otherwise, they weren't planning on sharing it with us at all. So we had absolutely no investment. We had one page that had 6 line items on it that said specifically the allegations were from Bottler from 2002, but they opened up the investigation, I believe it was 10 days to the day after I testified here at OGO.
Can I add to that, Mr. Chair?
But did you receive a request to participate in the investigation? We had the CBSA investigator before committee, and our understanding is that you were invited several times to participate and participate in an interview as part of the investigation, and that you declined those requests or did not respond to them. Is that correct?
Well, actually, that's not correct. The first time that they emailed me, I'm actually on sick leave. The first time they emailed me, they emailed my work address. The second time they emailed my home address. We responded. We've responded, I think, 4 times totaling, saying that we would participate in the investigation. We have asked a number of times for them to disclose information so that we can prepare for the investigation and prepare for the interview. And we're happy to do that. We just want to have information with which to be able to come in and prepare and defend ourselves.
And if I can add, Mr. Chair, can I please add to that?
Sorry, it's Mr.
I'm
Backrack's
sorry.
time, so Mr.
It,
Backrack.
I'm sorry. It just seems a little bit like a misrepresentation that you said that you weren't interviewed, but you were clearly invited to be interviewed as part of the process. But you demanded to have certain documents, which they didn't provide, and as a result, you didn't participate in the investigation. It seems like the opportunity was open to you. But I'm going to move on to a different claim, Mr. McDonald. You claimed that you didn't sign contracts for ArriveCan. Mr. Utano, I didn't hear you make the same claim. Did you sign contracts for any ArriveCan vendors?
Yeah, just want to confirm, we never had authority to be, or were the contracting authorities on any of those contracts. We were the
So
technical authorities.
Okay, in the Auditor General's report, she clearly highlights the fact that you were responsible for choosing GC Strategies as the vendor for the contract. Is that
So just to remind,
is that accurate?
so it's not accurate. First, we never had the authority to make the decision. If we presented options, if we had the authority to make the decision, why would we present options in the first place? Second, we presented evidence to this committee and to the Auditor General on who made the decision. Thirdly, what she was referring to, I believe, was a requisition. Requisition is step 1 of 6 in contracting, but that only starts after a decision is rendered. And I'm going to repeat it again. Once the decision was made by the VP, Mindone, and the President to move forward with GC Strategies, we were then told to execute and move forward.
It's all a little bit unbelievable based on the facts that have been disclosed so far. But I'm going to move on to the RCMP investigation. Mr. McDonald indicated that he has not been invited to participate or be interviewed as part of that investigation. Have you, Mr. Utano?
As I said earlier, no, I have not been contacted or I'm aware if I'm part of that investigation.
And do either of you expect to be contacted by the RCMP as part of this investigation?
I don't expect to be contacted, but if I am, I'm happy to comply. If I could, Mr. Backrack, just answer. I don't know what we've said that you find unbelievable. We provided evidence to both this committee and to the Auditor General that it was not us that selected GC Strategies. It's unfortunate the Auditor General didn't have the time to incorporate that into her report. We did speak with the Auditor General very late in the process, but it's very clear that we did not. And these came from CBSA's own notes which were shared with the President, President O'Gorman. So I don't take offense to your statement that it's not believable. I just don't understand what isn't believable. We don't have the authority to put contracts in place, and we clearly didn't make this decision. So those are the facts as they are.
I think that the thing that's unbelievable is that if you read the public reporting on this matter, the articles that have appeared in the Globe and Mail, if you read the preliminary statement of fact, if you read the report by Bottler, it very clearly indicates that you had an intimate role in the ArriveCan contracts in GC Strategies. Mr. Firth described you as someone who's been a friend for as long as you've been working for the government. Is that an accurate statement on his part?
Mr. Chair,
We're out of time, but if you could just do a quick response.
It's not an accurate statement, and it's already been testified to that it was an inaccurate statement. So if the member wants to watch testimony from previous witnesses, including myself and others, the member will know that this is not accurate whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Backrack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Block, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you for joining us today to provide further testimony on the issue of ArriveCan. My first question would be in response to Mr. Utano's answer to my colleague, Mr. Backrack. Did I hear you say that you were the individual who signed off on the contract requisition to PSPC for the first ArriveCan contract awarded to GC Strategies?
So just to be, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So to be clear, the requisition was the beginning of the process to put a contract in place. It wasn't the actual contract. And that was only done after the decision was rendered on which direction and vendor to go with to work on a ArriveCan application. And that decision came down from our VP and President at the time.
Thank you. But you were the individual who signed off on that requisition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I haven't seen the document that the OEG was referring to, but it sounds in around that the same time frame and area.
Thank you. I guess my next question does refer to the Auditor General's report. Why did you not pursue the alternatives given to you by PSPC to make this contract competitive? In other words, the Auditor General mentioned a suggestion which would have allowed a shorter bidding period of just 10 days, which would have worked with necessary timelines. Why did you not pursue that?
Question. I'll start off if you want to jump in after, but so a couple things, just to put some more context to it. 10 days is the actual timeline that would be put on the street, if you will, for vendors to participate. However, leading up to that, there's the development time to curate a proposal, and that takes weeks, if not months, to do. Second, when we worked with PSPC, we worked in conjunction with them as well as our internal controllership with a targeted a goal to move forward with an RFP as quickly as possible. The third thing is we were given direction from our superiors that we will not be able to stop. We didn't have the luxury of pausing during the pandemic, and so we followed that direction, and we were working with the experts in procurement and contracting, and we did the best that we could with the tools that we had. But we'd never had the authorities to just make unilateral contracting decisions. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you.
If I could just add a couple of things. The first contract that happened with GC Strategies was, I believe, for about $1.4 million. We were told at the time it was exceptional circumstances. The borders had closed. We had no idea where ArriveCan was going. We had no idea what it would turn into. And we were told, go get this done. We need to get something out there. So I have to admit, like, the CBSA, and I say it as an agency, not Mr. Utano or not myself,
Right.
but we did push back at PSPC. Oftentimes people say something can take 10 days, but it can also take 10 weeks.
Sure.
So-
Thank you for that. I appreciate that explanation. Mr. Otano, you just said something that has piqued my interest when you talk about curating a proposal. Who is responsible to curate a proposal?
So as far as roles and responsibilities, I can tell you that as the acting DG or DG, we don't have that. We don't have the responsibility to write. We don't write RFPs. We don't do evaluations of submissions, and we don't select.
Who
vendors.
does?
Well, it's done in collaboration with the team. So there'd be
Okay.
there'd be technical authorities and others involved in that.
So can you tell me who was responsible for signing off on the second contract awarded to GC Strategies for ArriveCan?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that. So GC Strategies had met with the commercial branch and travelers branch. I wasn't part of it, and they did, they call it a technical bake-off, but there were two companies that were showcasing their technology. I believe it was commercial branch chose the GC Strategies and wrote a justification for national security exemption. That justification went to the CFO, Jonathan Moore, who then wrote a letter to PSPC seeking approval for the national security exemption. I provided this evidence to all committee members. In that letter, it actually states that they had a preferred vendor who had done work with Transport Canada, hence the commercial ties. So we took that on because we were the IT team. But the genesis of the second contract was additional scope to tie into ArriveCan that came from the business line.
Thank you. And I guess my next question was who was responsible for signing off on the third contract awarded to GC Strategies? And a follow-up would be who would be responsible for documenting all of these contracts?
The third contract, just to try and answer your question as quickly as possible, the third contract was for accessibility. I believe it was also done under the National Security Exemption banner, which provided PSPC and CBSA with availability to do a sole source. The reason that GC Strategies was chosen for the third contract was kind of like if you were adding scope to kitchen renovation. You're not going to go hire a net new contractor to come in, but you have to have a new contract for it. That's what PSPC said. The original two didn't have that in scope, so we needed a third contract. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. How much time do I have?
You have minus 20 seconds.
Thanks.
Mr. Baines, over to you, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to both Mr. Utano and Mr. McDonald for joining us here today again. Regarding the statement, the preliminary statement of fact, did you provide or did you authorize your counsel to share the preliminary statement with any MPs prior to Mr. LaFleur's appearance?
Not in full.
W-
Oh, no, sorry.
You
Prior to
pro-
Mr. LaFleur's appearance, the first time or the second time, sir?
the last appearance, his last appearance.
I don't remember the date of when I received a copy of the preliminary statement of facts to juxtapose it against Mr. LaFleur. Once I had received the preliminary statement of facts, I made sure my counsel had it. In and around that time, I believe a committee member asked for information surrounding it, and I know both Mr. Utano and I said that it was acceptable, and we agreed that certain elements could be shared.
Certain elements not in full.
No.
Okay. When you appeared last, you told the committee that this started off as a replacement for a piece of paper that cost about $3 each. When we think about the 60 million transactions or 40 million transactions on ArriveCan, I like to think of it as an overall cost saving for Government of Canada. Do you still stand by that past statement?
Thank you for the question. I was surprised that the OAG didn't have an element of that in her report. I think all factors regarding the value of the app need to be considered. As I've said, GC Strategies brought in some really good consultants, and they did a good job at building the app while I was there. And I think the fact of the matter is she did express the fact that it was taking more than the quarantine time to be able to get provinces the information. There was also a cost to doing that. So from my vantage point and kind of having a background that understands how to count, I would say that there was definitely a cost avoidance. I can't say that there was a cost savings, but had they stayed on paper, it certainly would have cost more than ArriveCan did.
From your testimony, you didn't have a model to follow when you built ArriveCan. As you know, the software app is not what the government usually purchases, which is commercially off the shelf, readily available to industry market. Like in these cases, the IP ownership is retained by the developer, but in this case, the IP is retained by the Government of Canada. Does the rapid development and IP ownership represent value in your eyes?
Go ahead.
Well, I think actually President Gorman came in and testified to that they did not throw away non-recoverable engineering costs in developing it. They're using it today. They're processing 300,000 passengers per month is what I believe the testimony was. The intellectual property belongs to the Government of Canada, and that was absolutely by, I'll say, design, because we eventually want to get to the point where we have the abilities. When we say we, our staff has the capabilities and abilities to develop and work with this technology moving forward.
Okay, Mr. McDonald, I want to go back actually just one more time to quickly for the preliminary statement of fact. Before you share, when you found it acceptable to share it with members of the committee, which member did you actually share it with? Who reached out to you, or your counsel? Was it our chair or what? Like,
No. Mr. Brock has reached out a couple of times and asked for information to have insight, and maybe I'll just make sure the committee is aware. Our door was open to anybody, and it remains open. So if anybody would like to speak or know more about what's going on, I'm happy, and I think Mr. Utano is. Some of that information is very personal.
If you could please provide share the timeline of when you received the request and whom you received the request from members of this committee, and dates, if you can recall. If you maybe share that in writing, please.
Yeah, we can follow up after. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of back and forth, but I will endeavor to do it as soon as we can. But yep.
Okay, and I'm going to continue on with another line of questioning here.
Real brief, Mr. Baines.
There was one thing I wanted to clarify. The opposition kept repeating that this was supposed to cost $80,000. Is this possible that this app could cost $80,000?
No, The app could never have cost $80,000. The $80,000 was to build a digital prototype that moved paper onto basically an online form that could be used on a mobile phone. It was used to be able to show and demonstrate that you could digitize something, which is something the Government of Canada has been very interested in doing. And through doing that, it demonstrated there was a doorway to building an app.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Baines. We'll go to Mrs. Vignola for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais laisser.
Thank you very much. I'll allow the witnesses to put their e-pieces in. Thank you. Mr. McDonald, between 2017 and 2020, where were you working in the government?
Moi, je travaille à PSPC.
I was working at PSPC in real property. I was an executive director at the time in charge of project portfolios to do with building and construction. In other words, several billion-dollar budget for construction projects. And then I moved into information technology for 3 years thereafter. Now, just to refresh my memory, when did you in fact meet Mr. Firth for the first time?
Monsieur Firth, le premier fois.
Well, I met Mr. Firth around 2010 when I was working at Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada. I didn't know him prior to that date. We didn't meet often. We didn't work together per se, and his company, GC Strategies, didn't even exist at the time. I changed roles a couple of years later, and I wasn't in project delivery. And thereafter, I completely left information management, and I had no contact with him for over 8 years. So in 2010, Mr. Firth was a shareholder, a co-owner of Corodex Systems Consulting. Is that correct?
J'ai aucune idée.
I have no idea. I don't know. I'm sorry about that. Most of the contracts that you mentioned were with Transport Canada in any event, as you mentioned earlier. Question. In the Auditor General's report, and this question is directed at both witnesses, how do you explain that among the 25 important updates to ArriveCAN, there was no paperwork, paper trail, or the paper trail was incomplete? And as a result of that, the Auditor General concluded that out of 177 updates, well, that there was very little paper trail in regards of them. How do you explain that?
Sir.
I'm sorry, the translation cut off the last word. I think she's asking about testing.
Could you repeat the last little bit, Mrs. Vignola? We're trying to get to an answer. Translation issue.
Je vais attendre les
So I'll just wait for you to put your earpieces in.
problèmes de traduction. Faudrait mettre l'oreillette.
If there is difficulties with interpretation, please do put your earpieces in. So, question, what explains the dearth of paperwork or the total lack of a paper trail regarding the updates and changes made to the application, including the 25 most important updates or modifications?
Yeah, we're past our time. If you could offer a brief answer.
A brief answer, yeah, I can jump in. So there's a whole host of actually documents, and I'm not sure if the OEG was provided with that. OICs triggered every single change, technical change that reflected orders and councils that were ordered, then brought down. Moreover, and I don't know if it was presented to the OEG, I know from a technical perspective, we used an online tool that would track all the different changes. Third, we had a project manager eventually put in and who tracked every single version and the origins, if you will, of the genesis of each and every single version and changes. I apologize, Madam, I don't know what was presented to the Office of the Auditor General, but I can assure there is documentation there.
Thanks very much. Mr. Bachrach, back to you, please, sir.
Mr. McDonald, when you appeared before committee on November 7th, you provided a significant number of documents, including emails from your time at the CBSA. How did you obtain those documents?
I kept records of some of the documents that I had when I was there.
So at the time, you were no longer an employee of CBSA, but you retained emails from your time there. Were those emails your property, or were those the property of CBSA?
You'd have to ask CBSA, but given the nature of what's happened, I'm pretty glad that I have them, because it seems like a lot of emails have been deleted, and I would suggest not maybe just Mindone's, but other people's too. So if CBSA thinks that I've done something wrong, they can add that to the preliminary statement of falsehoods.
Now, in your opening statement on November 7th, you said, I received an unsolicited, jointly branded GC Strategies and Bottler proposal. Now, on January 18th, Ms. O'Gorman, the president of CBSA, said, quote, I don't agree that that was proper procurement. It was not an unsolicited proposal. Who are we to believe here?
Well, Mrs. O'Gorman also said that she wasn't part of the investigation and was insulating herself, so I don't know how she has all this information with which to testify with when she says that she doesn't know anything, and she only got briefed when the PSF was created. So I think Mrs. O'Gorman has not told the truth a few times during her testimonies and misled this committee, to be honest. And, you know, whether you believe me or not is up to you, but I've come here, I've told the truth, I've provided evidence time and time again, and, that's where things stand. I think we're at odds, Ms. O'Gorman and I, but, given the situation and what's happened, I can only conclude that she's not telling the truth when she appears.
We have Ms. O'Gorman, we have the Auditor General, we have the Bottler report, we have all of these things, and you're essentially saying that all of these people are not representing the truth and that the committee should believe you. I'm finding this a little difficult to follow how we're to understand all of these contradictions that keep popping up in the testimony.
So that's fair. I mean, you read the preliminary statement of facts, so you will have seen that Bottler tried to get a contract not once but twice in order to just proceed with work with the CBSA.
And is that, just to stop you there, Mr. McDonald, is that contract
we're past our time? Do you have a very quick question, Mr. Bachrach?
Well, I'm wondering if you can provide evidence that Bottler is trying to seek a contract for compensation for the work they did, because that's not my understanding.
Well, it says it clearly in the document, so I don't know how to understand it other than Bottler sought a contract to provide the misconduct report that they used as the allegations. And in Mr. Utano's report, it says that they sought a contract in order to present as a witness or participate in the investigation. So,
Can I just add to that real quick?
We're really out of time, perhaps.
It wasn't. We're not saying that. CBSA said that.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brock, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance. I want to take my opening round with both of you to put a fine point on this issue. This discussion has to end, and it needs to end today as to who's responsible for the selection of GC Strategies. Canadians want to know. Canadians are rightfully angry that this two-person firm working out of their basement doing no IT work have collected almost $20 million in taxpayer funds. So I can understand why the government wants to shield themselves, the Justin Trudeau government wants to shield themselves from any responsibility. So I know the Auditor General was unable to precisely identify which individual. She made a suggestion, Mr. Utano, that perhaps you should accept responsibility for it. Her words were that you signed the requisition on behalf of the agency, which amounts to an exercise of delegated authority and carries with it responsibility and accountability. But prior to that particular statement, did you not meet with the Auditor General's team?
We met with the Auditor General for approximately 30 minutes. Once I'm told, the report was already drafted. Essentially, I believe we were just a ticky box.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, you met with the AG team?
I met with the AG team the same day as Mr. Utano.
And did the issue as to who chose GC Strategies come up?
Yes, that was one of the first questions that came up. And
And you provided documentation to support your theory as to who chose GC Strategies?
yes, I did.
And who was that person again?
It was Mindone and
Mindone.
the president.
Did you supply any information by way of an ATIP to the AG?
Yes, I supplied the same information that I put forward to OGO to
Okay.
show the three components of all of the selections of GC strategies.
And within that ATIP, there was a briefing preparatory package which contained an item that I brought to the attention of departmental officials. Whose decision was it to contract GC? I'm going to read this out and I want an explanation. My office made the decision to pursue the contract with GC Strategies. The two proposals for the work were presented to the CIO and president, and the decision was made to proceed with GC Strategies as their proposal and approach aligned with what the CBSA was looking for, particularly rapid staff augmentation. The Deloitte proposal was a managed service using their cloud instance. This would have involved additional risk and did not align with our direction to build cloud mob competencies within the agency. Who are they referring to?
They're referring to Mindone and John Izowski. And the reason why it was written like that was because Mindone had a fake heart attack and Kelly Belanger took over for him. So the notes were updated so that Kelly Belanger could attend OGO with Erin O'Gorman, as she did. The record will reflect it. And that's why it was written there. But the question you have to ask yourself is, who was the CIO and who was the president when the decision was made?
Who was the CIO at that time?
Mindone.
Mindone. And the president?
John Izowski.
Osowski. Now, you've identified individuals who have misled the committee. I'm not going to use the word who misled. I want to know who lied to committee, who lied to parliamentarians, who lied to Canadians. Identify those players, please.
Well, frankly, if you look at that package that I provided to the OAG, there are three components. The first one shows clearly that Mindone and John Izowski were the ones that selected. The second,
Don't lie to Canadians.
Mindone has completely lied to Canadians. on
Did John
multiple fronts.
Osowski lie to Canadians when he appeared at committee?
I can only assume that that's what he did because this is what Erin O'Gorman's own documentation preparing for OGO says. And even Erin O'Gorman pretended that she didn't know who selected GC Strategies, yet she was briefed on it.
Right.
Specifically, the third component says, please send this and the national security exemption request from Jonathan Moore that Mindone was copied on to Erin O'Gorman's own office. Like, it just doesn't make any sense that
When
nobody
Erin
would know.
O'Gorman appeared at committee last week, she was shocked that we were focusing so much attention on her. Did she lie to committee? Did she lie to Canadians that she had no responsibility or no knowledge as to who chose GC Strategies? Yes or no, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you much, Mr. Brock. Mr. Shawari, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome back to our committee. I'm going to pick up where my colleague MP Baines had left. I felt that the answers that we got from both of you gentlemen around commitment to get us some timelines may have left the door open. So I'd like to specifically ask you both to provide to the committee within 1 week, as per our procedures in the past, the timeline that you received the initial statement of fact, the timeline that it was given to your legal, the timeline that our Mr. Brock reached out to you or legals, the scope of the document that was given to Mr. Brock, because we know that the clerk received a document on February 9th, and it was roughly about 10 days after where we were in a position to be able to receive that document shortly after the appearance of the CBSA investigator and within hours after that testimony, receiving a letter from legal representative that says ignore everything, and please don't communicate any of the content to the public in a public way, which seems today we have completely disregard all of those. So can you commit, both of you, and I want a yes or no answer, that you will provide all those timelines within 1 week to the committee?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Ritano? Okay,
Yes.
thank you, sir. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, so now let's go back. Both of you have referred to the initial statement of fact as initial statement of falsehood. Without getting to the detail, which I committed in the past, that I will not direct my questioning there. Where you believe the falsehood, around what parameters the falsehood is there?
First of all, I want to say thank you for respecting that privacy. It's meaningful to both of us. It appears to us that somebody basically just went into our emails, and likely somebody who knew us, or consultations occurred, and really just started collecting things and putting things together with a narrative and a storyline that indicate wrongdoing. The entire document is couched with words that would not only make you believe something was wrong, but there's a could have or might have. These are not facts at all. And I just want to remind this committee that when Mr. Lafleur, who is not the lead investigator, but he is the director or executive director of the team, came, he admitted that these were allegations. Even Mrs. O'Gorman said that these were point in time. And so the kind of question is, if this is a point in time document, why did they decide to release it at that time to our bosses and have us suspended with pay? Why would Aaron O'Gorman make a phone call to our bosses? That's not a formal thing to do when you're dealing with such a serious subject. How come there's no writing? How come there's no email documentation that shows what she talked about with our bosses?
Fair enough. Thank you. Just wanted to understand, because the follow-up question will get into the detail that I've made a commitment I'm not going to talk about, to ensure the integrity of this process. Now, what are your thoughts about the AG report? Because the AG is telling us that there's a lot of document missing, and you specifically told us that as your role as a technical, both of your roles as a technical, you signed a lot of documents, such as the technical spec, and also timesheets and all of that. And the AG seems not being able to find that. And yet, you seem to be in a position to be able to say, this application could have not cost $80,000. It's actually $6.3 million. And I thank you for at least bringing to perspective a number that we could ground ourselves around the development of this application. So with 15 seconds to go, can you explain to me what documents you can or cannot sign, and you have and have not signed?
And Mr. Jwari, we've been letting everyone run a bit longer, so I'll allow them a bit of time to answer your question more than
Okay,
15
thank you very
seconds,
much,
sir.
Chair.
Can I just one more quick point from the previous question, sir? The reason why we think there's a lot of falsehoods in that document is not at all accurate. It has no evidence, but it also doesn't take any context into consideration. There's timelines in there where I wasn't even at work. I was dealing with a personal medical issue for 2 months, but there was inferences made leading to what looks like us in a negative light. I'll just pause that with respect to some points in the PSF.
Thanks. If we could just get to Mr. Jwari's question.
Yeah, so I think on behalf of Mr. Utano and I, we both have a deep respect for the AG, and we don't want to undermine her report. The fact of the matter is we weren't interviewed until after her report was written, and we have absolutely no idea what information was provided to her, what information was deleted so that it couldn't be provided to her. And I won't speak to anything other than the fact that she's always represented herself and her organization professionally. However, it wasn't that hard for us to find information that Mrs. O'Gorman should have had about who picked GC Strategies, and she wasn't provided it. But she was provided with the preliminary statement of facts, which had nothing to do with her audit. So it just goes to my point that there was obviously an attempt by Mrs. O'Gorman to try and slight us.
Great. Thanks, gentlemen. Mr. Genwes, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. McDonald and Mr. Utano, I want to drill down on the mechanics of the internal investigation. I assume you're familiar with Mr. Lafleur's testimony here on February the 5th. He's conducting the internal investigation. He confirmed in his response to my questions that he is not an independent investigator, that he's not able to act independently. He's subject to the internal chain of command at CBSA. I emphasized at the time that I thought this was a deeply flawed process. Determinations of accountability require a proper external investigation in which powerful people, CBSA leadership, and politicians can be held accountable. The RCMP is investigating, but we also need to identify wrongdoing that falls short of criminal behavior. Why do you think the government is pursuing this internal investigation instead of an independent investigation into who is responsible?
Real brief, it's an attempt to scapegoat us and point fingers at us. If the question is around why do we think there's an issue with the internal investigation, I can answer that further, but I want to let maybe Mr. McDonald answer as well why he thinks.
Well, it's clear that this ArriveCAN issue has drawn national attention. It's clear that Bottler themselves have tried to influence the media and are a marketing machine. From the statements that they've made out loud, it's clear that they have also engaged with people that they call leadership, which is obviously a lot higher than Erin O'Gorman. So I think Erin O'Gorman and the CBSA are pretty much holding on to these allegations as hard as they can. And I don't know what the fabric is between those three things, but it sure seems like Min Doan, John Izowski, Erin O'Gorman, nobody else at the CBSA or FAC or PSPC know anything, but these two guys here were the ones that were responsible for doing $60 million worth of work, contracting, and doing it so loosely that nobody can account for anything.
Okay. There is a serious discrepancy in the testimony around the timeline of this investigation that I think is important. Mr. Lafleur said they initiated an investigation in November of 2022. You said that the investigation was initiated into your conduct after your testimony in November of 2023. Did the internal investigation, specifically looking at allegations against you two, begin in November of 2022 or of 2023? And how can you, what evidence can you provide to support your position on that?
The document is protected B, but I believe it's my personal information, so I'll verify that I can share it. But I received a letter saying that the investigation for the Bottler allegations from 2022 was initiated 10 days after I testified here at OGO on November, I believe it was the 17th, 2023. And mine said initiated. Mr. Utano said reinitiated, which just doesn't make any sense to us.
Can I add some more clarification? So I learned this in 2023 November, that something was opened and closed, and I believe Ms. Dutt from Bottler AI confirmed that she got a call from Pierre Lessard, a chief security officer, saying the exact same thing that we told them in 2021 and the exact same thing that PSPC told them in the summer of 2023. This is a matter between you and your business partners, not the government of Canada, and it appears to be a misunderstanding on how procurement and contracting works in the government of Canada.
So you have written documentation to confirm that you can share with the committee, I hope, as soon as possible, that the government telling you in November of 2023 that they were either, in one case, initiating or in another case, reopening an investigation. Because if you can supply that to us, that explicitly contradicts the testimony that we received from Mr. Lafleur. Just quickly, because I want to get to another question. But
I can confirm it. If I'm able to provide it, I will. But the document says they are entering the fact-finding stage.
Right.
Which clearly goes.
So if what you said is accurate and if it's supported by the document, it would very clearly contradict the testimony that we heard from the investigator. You referenced the Prime Minister's words and suggested in your opening comments that it wasn't just a matter of other people in CBSA trying to put the whole blame for what happened onto YouTube, but you referenced the Prime Minister's comments. What do you think is motivating the Prime Minister's words? Why is he invested in the outcome of this investigation?
So I can start. It's a great question, and the answer is we don't know. We've been trying to access information to defend our character and our ability to defend against this, what's happening with this investigation. Our ATIPs have been delayed and blocked. Access to the original allegations have been denied. We keep trying to ask CBSA to clarify, but it's being denied. We don't know, and that's the issue. There's been cover up and doubling down, if you will, to try and protect and withhold information from us. Information is deleted. We just saw an announcement from the government of Canada that the internal ATIP machine within CBSA is down for the last 2 weeks. Something is going on, but this is what is concerning to us.
I guess I would just add, I'm not a politician and I don't want to get into politics, but there's a lot of it going on right now, and when we see what's happening with the OAG report, when we see what's happening with this, it just seems like there's been a lack of accountability overall, and so I was kind of shocked when I saw the media reports on the news that the Prime Minister had said what he said, because you can't say that there will be consequences when you're saying that there's an investigation. And in this case, we haven't even been contacted by the RCMP. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Generous. Colleagues, we're going to take a short 3 or 4 minute, 5-minute suspension break for use of the facilities, etc. We'll be back in 5. Souza, please, for 5. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the witnesses. So I got just a preamble here. And based upon Mr. Utano and Mr. McDonald's opening statements, I don't believe anyone's been charged here, and I don't believe there's been anything laid against anyone. So the Prime Minister or any other elected officials are not stating that. What they're stating that is if anyone held accountable, it then should be appropriately dealt with. And I think all of us have recognized that. That's why we're going through this process. And I do appreciate you recognizing, I think it was Mr. Tano, that ArriveCan would have cost more had it not been done another way, but there is value in the intellectual property of the work that has been done. And I think that's also critical to reaffirm. And Mr. McDonald, I appreciate you also recognizing that you've known Mr. Firth or met him first under Stephen Harper's days in 2010. So now I'm trying to understand the confusion between this preliminary fact, the stage of fact that has come out. It's not the final result. It's just a preliminary indication of what to do as part of the investigation. And as we go through the investigation, there is a next step. The next step, of course, is to provide interviews and to reach out to you and Mr. Tano. And I think you've already responded back to them via your lawyers as to coming forward to having an interview and going forward in this. And can you please confirm that you have actually held back on providing interviews with the investigator?
Maybe I'll start. Sure. So when you say held back, I think what we've done is maybe push back for our rights. We have asked for disclosure. We know that Bottler provided some form of email to Aaron O'Gorman and what they refer to as leadership, as well as requesting a contract for a misconduct report, to which the CBSA received a misconduct report some weeks later. That's what it says. That's what CBSA wrote in the document. So we've asked for that information in order to prepare for our participation, and we will continue to do so. But
yeah,
short of the fact that we received a notification that said that we were, they initiated.
Okay, fair enough. So we have a situation where an investigation is under review. You have concerns about sharing your evidence to ensure that the truth is made and that we get to the bottom of it. And we all agree with that. And I believe the investigation is also looking for that matter. And the RCMP is making their investigations. I don't know to what extent it has happened, because that's part of the integrity of the investigation. And certainly when we're dealing with this now in public, when we have individuals that are having conversations with you on the side, and we're here before this committee, we're prejudicing the possibility of a proper outcome, in my opinion. But notwithstanding, I don't want to discuss the actual details of the preliminary stage of fact, because that's the part that we're trying to protect you as well in that circumstance. So how is it then? And you've mentioned that one of the members of, well, he's not a full-time member of the committee, he's part-time, but he comes in and he's reached out to you. When did that first happen? When were you first approached by a committee member?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sousa, I think we've answered that, and I think we've committed to providing those timelines. To be completely honest, I don't have the exact dates and timelines in front of me. We did work with our council, and communications did happen through our council.
So did your council, did your council through you, did you give them authorizations to have documents shared with other members of the committee?
We authorized our council to do what is best in the best interest of his clients, and that'd be us.
So were you aware that your council was providing information? Obviously, you're telling me that neither one of you actually shared information with a member of the committee.
What we have said is that initially there were elements of the report that were shared, and
who shared the truth? Who shared them?
Shared through council.
So your council, so you did not have a direct conversation with members of the committee?
We have had direct conversations with that member of the committee, but we did not share.
So you have had, you've been having conversations with a member of this committee. The investigator then appears before this committee without other members of the committee having information at hand or having seen those documents. and then questioning the issues within that document that we do not want
We're
it
going to
to
have
make
to wrap
public.
up, Mr. Sousa, with a question.
So to each witness, have you directly or through your legal counsel confirmed you will participate with CBSA's Director General of Security and Professional Standards investigation? Yes or no?
He's not a director general, he's an executive director, and he's not a lead investigator, but we have confirmed in writing with him more than 3 times that we are willing to participate. We're just looking for a fair shot.
And we just want we want to add to on the record, sir, is that we've asked for disclosure, we've asked for the original allegations, we've asked for our ATIPs to be processed, and we only got a copy of this PSF because of a motion here at OGO. That was not disclosed to us during or before the request to come in for an interview. We've always articulated that we are ready and willing to participate, but let's have a fair and transparent one and not and have that disclosure as we've requested.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Mr. McDonald, do you know Mr. Kellerwhite? I don't think I do. Thank you. Do you know Ms. Heather Wallace? No, I don't. I see. Have you felt any pressure on the part of your superiors vis-a-vis GC strategies? Did you feel any pressure from your supervisors to choose GC strategies? Pressure? No, no pressure. I sent out an option for Deloitte, and Mr. Utano and his team created an option for GC strategies, and both options were sent to Ming Don, and Mr. Don told me the decision that we were going with GC strategies, and after that decision was made, the onus was then on us to deliver the goods. So there was no pressure per se on the part of Ming Don to select GC strategies. Ming Don and I don't agree as to what actually transpired in the discussions with Deloitte. The fact of the matter is that he said that they were in the penalty box, but it wasn't a discussion under duress or there was no pressure at the time. Thank you. Who proposed one plan? That's a good question. Kerry Belanger and Carol Sabourin. Kelly Belanger was the Director General for Project Management, and it was our responsibility to provide cloud services and such tools, but one plan had discussions with Mr. Firth and other consultants working on that file. The scope, I'm sorry I'm mangling the French a bit, but question.
Ms. Vignola, but we will
Merci.
get back to you. Mr. Bachrach, please.
Mr. McDonald, do you acknowledge that the emails you presented to the committee on November 7th were the property of CBSA?
I haven't been shown anything that says that.
Were those emails that were exchanged during your employment at CBSA using
When everybody
your
else exchanged emails in their testimony, were those emails the property of the CBSA as well? When Mr. Doan testified after I called him a liar and proved it, he came back and said that he had found emails that were deleted apparently, but he was able to
The
find them.
question was a fairly straightforward one, Mr. McDonald.
Sure.
Were those emails that were sent or received using your CBSA email account?
Yes.
Okay. And were those emails, do you acknowledge that those emails, because they were sent as part of your employment with CBSA, were the property of CBSA?
Answer that question, Mr. Chair. May I answer that question? When an ATIP is received, we are to divulge our emails. That then becomes the property of the Government of Canada as a whole, or even the requester. They pay a $5 fee and they get access to all our emails. So at that point, that's a great question, but If an ATIP is processed and emails are released, who owns the emails?
Well, the question was whether those emails are the property of CBSA, the emails that you brought to committee on November 7th. And, you know, because those emails were part of your employment there, they weren't yours to disclose to the committee. I guess my next question is, were you surprised then that your security clearance was revoked after that November 7th meeting? And was part of the reason your security clearance was revoked because you were disclosing emails that were the property of CBSA?
Mr. Chair, may I just, I can answer that. Our emails were released through ATIP requests. And we did not process ATIP requests. We don't have that many. We don't work in the ATIP office. I think what we're saying then is that the ATIP office released documents that were the property of a certain agency? I don't think so. The emails belong to the government of Canada and Canadians. Hence why we have an ATIP
So
process.
the documents that you brought to the November 7th meeting were all public domain?
Every document that I provided no documents that were protected. And furthermore, let's go back to the investigation, the letter that we received and the preliminary statement of facts. And none of it suggests that I provided secret information to jurisdictions that I shouldn't have. So I appreciate the line of questioning and I'm happy to answer your questions. I will always tell the truth. But
Okay,
my suspension wasn't due to the fact that I testified at this committee and provided evidence as is being suggested.
Okay, that is our time, Mr. Bachrach. We will go to Mr. Brock and then Mr. Kuzmierczak.
So despite the unsuccessful efforts of my Liberal colleagues today and actually throughout this week to try to spin the narrative that Canadians received really good value for the $60 million wasted on this Arrive scam, we often hear that it saved lives, and there's really no empirical evidence to suggest that one life was actually saved, yet the Liberals continue with this narrative. And I think Canadians would actually prefer the independent voice of the Auditor General on the issue of value and not biased Liberal members. So I'm going to put that phrase to you in her report. The Canadian Border Services Agency's disregard for policies, controls, and transparency in the contracting process restricted opportunities for competition and undermined value for money. Emphasis, value for money. So the focus that I have for the amount of time I have left is to really drill down on the guess that the Auditor General made with respect to what this fiasco costs Canadians. It's almost $60 million, but that doesn't include the probably millions of dollars that were paid to the Federal Public Service. So can you offer any suggestion as to how many millions of dollars on top of that $60 million was actually paid to the professional Federal Public Service?
So I'll start with that. So with respect to responsibilities on the oversight of what this whole thing costs, that does not fall on the technical delivery teams. So to give you an estimate on what it costs to pay public servants, I don't have that answer, Mr. Brock.
But you can confirm that federal public servants did work over the number of years that the 177 different applications of this Arrive scam was being rolled out. We did have federal public servants working, correct?
That's
Absolutely,
correct.
we have.
Absolutely. Okay.
And not just
there's a cost.
Not just within the agency, the CBSA, but we also have to look at PHAC and the other
Absolutely.
agencies. And then we're not responsible for providing that whole.
Absolutely. Okay. And we don't know what that number is, but it's going to be more than the $60 million estimate. And we also have evidence from the Auditor General that there were actual millions of dollars paid out to contractors who did zero work on the ArriveCAN, but actually unrelated work. Now, do you have evidence for the time that you were at CBSA of entities coming forward, knowing that there was a pot of unlimited resources to take advantage of, seeking millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects unrelated to ArriveCAN? Mr. McDonald.
I don't have any evidence of wrongdoing, just to be clear. I think what I would say is that there were divisions, federal public servants who wanted to associate with ArriveCan so that they could get the funding that they needed to move their initiatives forward. Well, there were a few in commercial. There were a few other in travelers. We had some corollary projects that we had already started, some no-touch mobile, the e-declaration, some of these things that we were trying to work on. And if you could just put it under an ArriveCan tagline, it was easier to achieve the funding and get the budget that you wanted from the finance branch. So oftentimes what people would do is if they had overall agendas, they would associate it with what was going on in the pandemic, and then ArriveCan, they would get the budget for it, and then they would move it closer to it.
Essentially lying to access taxpayer money using the tagline ArriveCan. Is that fair to say?
I have to be honest with you. I wouldn't call it a lie. I would call it perhaps an exaggeration, but they would align what they were hoping to achieve as their target with what was happening as ArriveCan to obtain their outcome. It's a stretch. There's a very big difference between a stretch and a lie, in my opinion. But I never saw anybody nefariously lie so that they could get access to hundreds of thousands of dollars. But let's say they were loosely coupled.
Mr. McDonald, I believe in black and white. I don't believe in gray. Okay? If people are accessing taxpayer funds that has absolutely nothing to do with the ArriveCan application and development, they are misleading government officials to access taxpayer funds. I call that misleading. I call that an absolute lie. How many millions of dollars can you estimate was actually spent on individuals, organizations that you just described?
I left after the first year. I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess, but I would say the number would be higher than $1 million if you totaled it from my vantage point.
Okay.
That is
that
your
my
time.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuzmirchuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony. The challenge for our committee, of course, from the very beginning has been to separate what is fact and what is fiction. My grandma used to say, eat the fish, spit the bones. And so we're trying to separate what are the fish and what are the bones. So I wanted to ask you, our conservative colleagues continue to repeat that this was an $80,000 app that ballooned to $60 million. Is this true?
No, it's not true. As I've said before, the prototype was about $80,000. To get an app was about $400,000. I really wish Canadians would understand what it costs to actually convert paper into digital in the timelines that we had. And this was included on 2 different mobile platforms, not to mention the changes. We went all the way to making the app mandatory and making it mandatory to submit it before you came into the country, to collecting sensitive information on a protected cloud, to making sure that it was protected in the first place. There's no way that this app would have been done in a weekend, as other people have tried to suggest.
Mr. McDonald, how much did the app cost, the app itself? The app itself.
I mean,
ballpark figure.
So we've left the agency since then, but ballpark between I'm going to guess between 12 million to 14 million for the actual app itself.
For the app itself.
Purely
the rest of the cost is it fair to say, Mr. McDonald? Is it fair to say the rest of the cost above, let's say, the $10 to $12 million was the back end supports, the data storage, the Service Canada call centers, all the things that make this system run? Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, 100%. And in fact, prior to my prior testimony where I told you that Min put Deloitte in the penalty box, the data office was trying to go with Deloitte, and Min told them the exact same thing. And so half of those costs moved over to our side because it was all kind of oriented around cloud and storage and whatnot. So we bore a lot of those costs. But I mean, to think about the data pipelines, the security, the ability to do the back-end infrastructure, what we had to do at one point was validate that people had actually crossed the border. Because if you submitted through ArriveCan, the data was going to the province was checking on people, but if they never got on the plane, they were wasting their time. So we had to do verification checks to make sure that everybody who said they were coming across actually made it across, and then we would only send that data over.
So let me ask you a question, because you mentioned, Mr. Utano mentioned 12 million, but I heard you say 6 million before. Can you clarify what is the cost of the app itself?
The overall cost of the first year of operation that I was tracking, I left right after that, was $6.3 million. That included security, hosting fees, validation, independent reviews, the build of the app, et cetera.
Okay. The deputy leader of the Conservatives stood in the House of Commons and said that the ArriveCAN did no work. And I quote, is this true? Is this fish or bones?
It's definitely politics. From our vantage point, I think we can show that there were over 40 million transactions done on the app with the web mobile platforms. These were processed, they were passed on to FAC. And I do recall in the early days there were many studies that were done about the speed at which people could transact. Not to mention the fact that I've talked about the cost. I mean, they used to take the piece of paper and put it into a biohazardous bag, ship it in a truck to Ottawa so that people could manually enter it into a spreadsheet. So efficiencies, I think, were there, which was why the direction to proceed with an app and make it mandatory was the decision that was made by the government.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Question for you. This week, did you speak with Mr. Brock this week ahead of your testimony here today?
Who are you asking?
Both.
Okay. Yes, we had a discussion with Mr. Brock.
Mr. McDonald, can you tell me what you discussed with Mr. Brock this week ahead of your testimony here today?
Mr. Brock wanted to know a little bit about what I provided to the OAG. He wanted to know what my thoughts were. He wanted clarification on the details around the office and who was the CIO. He wanted to confirm his assertion that it was Mindon who was the CIO and John Azowski who was the president at the time. I don't remember what else we talked about.
Did he ever tell you, Mr. McDonald, did he ever tell you which questions he will be asking you ahead of time?
No, never tell me what questions. He kind of indicated that he wasn't necessarily happy with some of the testimony of other people, and he really wanted to zero in on certain things to get to the bottom of where he didn't understand the connection point. For some of it, I wasn't able to answer it because I wasn't there anyways. So, not that it's difficult for me, but
answer.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry, we're just past. Ms. Vignola, please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'll continue with my previous question regarding One Plan. Who created the assignment forms for One Plan, please? The tasks, authorizations. Well, apparently there were meetings between Kelly Belanger's team and her executive director. I don't know if there were any other members of her team present. They discovered the scope of the task authorizations that would need to be performed. And I believe that it was us who signed off on the task authorizations as part of what was required to be delivered. Mr. Utano and I were not part of those discussions regarding the scope. Question. So you didn't put together the task authorizations. It was GC Strategies that looked after that, and that those task authorizations were part of an existing contract. Can you confirm or deny that?
Je vais essayer de mon mieux pour...
I'll do my best to respond to your question. In my opinion, it was Kelly Belanger's team and her executive director who raised the particular needs. We were the ones who used the contract. It was the third contract of its kind with GC Strategies that was used for that purpose. And if I recall, at the tail end of the discussion, given everything that was happening, we said that it was perhaps an opportunity to use the same thing for the accessibility component. but there was pressure from the Treasury Board Secretariat and the Privy Council office to ensure that the app would be available to Canadians in short order. Thank you. Should we understand that the tens of thousands of pages submitted to the committee were quote-unquote cleaned up, and just like the documentation submitted to the Auditor General in order to protect people and pass the buck onto you? And we know that most of the complaints had to do with the PSPC, or rather PHAC, and that there were whistleblowers, or rather the CBSA, that there were whistleblowers who were punished for having called out poor practices. Do you believe that the CBSA, when it comes to their contracting processes and contract management processes, should be placed under administration? Do you believe that the CBSA should in some way be put under administration?
Je regrette, Madame.
I'm sorry, Ms. Vignola. I'll try my best, but unfortunately things were cutting in and out in my earpiece. If I understood your question correctly, you're asking whether the CBSA should have the ability to provide contracts. No, that's not what I was asking. I'm sorry. Things were cutting in and out. Now, question. Evidently...
Well, but you have
Oh,
someone
mais là,
around
c'est quand même
that.
pas de ma faute.
Well, it's not my fault, I'm afraid, if there was a poor interpretation.
Ms. Vignola, a couple seconds of my time if she wants to finish.
Can we just suspend for a couple of seconds? We'll check the interpretation for the gentleman, please.
Merci. Donc, je vais reprendre ma...
So, I'll start my question from the beginning to ensure that you've understood correctly, and I will speak very slowly. Should we understand that the tens of thousands of pages submitted to the committee were quote-unquote cleaned up, as well as the documentation submitted to the Auditor General in order to protect individuals and pass the buck off onto you and lay the blame squarely on your heads? I continue. We've understood from the Information Commissioner that most of the complaints had to do with CBSA. Moreover, we know that whistleblowers suffered retribution and retaliation based on the fact that they called out poor practices in the management of passports. All of that tied together, do you consider that the CBSA should be put under administration in some way or another?
If you're able to do a brief answer, if not, I'm sure we'll get back to the next round.
So the fact of the matter is that I couldn't tell you what documents were provided to the OAG or for these investigations, and I won't suggest that they were cleaned up or doctored. I wouldn't know. I was surprised that, the people that they're accusing of doing all of this work, the inventors of ArriveCan, if you will, as we've been kind of tagged through this investigation and everything, weren't even interviewed until the end. And my last comment would just be, I think it's pretty clear that tens of thousands of emails were deleted by Mindone. And if that's the case, then I don't know that the information could be doctored. It just was never provided.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. And sorry about that, Ms. Vignola, with the translation. Mr. Bachrach, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Utano, you indicated in your opening remarks that you were previously employed with the RCMP. I believe I recall hearing that in your remarks. Do you trust the RCMP to complete a full and impartial investigation on this matter?
I do trust the RCMP, yes.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that we've repeated assertions by both of you that there's been no misconduct and no wrongdoing in these matters around the procurement of the ArriveCan app.
Mr. Chair, I do apologize for interrupting Mr. Bachrach, but I can't seem to hear. It's not coming through. Mr. Bachrach, your sound is not coming through.
Okay. We'll suspend for a couple of seconds and we'll check. I'll get the clerk to check with Mr. Bachrach. So we'll just suspend for a couple of seconds. Thanks, Mr. Kusmirchuk.
We've heard these repeated assertions that there's been no misconduct and no wrongdoing in the procurement of the ArriveCan app, and yet we have the RCMP currently conducting an investigation. Are you suggesting that this investigation is unnecessary?
So thank you for the question. So we're not sure if we're even involved in the RCMP investigation. We haven't been contacted by the RCMP in their investigation. What we did assert is that we're concerned with the internal administrative investigation. There is conflicts of interest, there's bias and missing context in all the allegations presented in the PSF. The RCMP did not create the PSF. Moreover, we have evidence of demonstrating that continuity of evidence was not even maintained. You've heard about the accusations around deletion of emails, and now you've heard also about information is being withheld. Never mind, the original allegation is still yet is outstanding despite us asking for disclosure. This has nothing to do with the RCMP. Right. This is all to do with the internal administration that's being led by the CBSA. So yes, I do have severe concerns with the CBSA administrative investigation for those reasons.
You've repeatedly expressed concern about the Auditor General's findings. You've expressed a lack of belief in the preliminary statement of fact from the internal investigation. You have trouble with the Bottler report, and yet the RCMP seems to think that based on what they've been given, there's a basis for an RCMP investigation here. I'm trying to understand, these two perspectives. One is nothing to see here, and the other one is lots to see here. Very important. Need to get to the bottom of this. How should the public understand that discrepancy?
Jump in. Number one, I just want to clarify. Some of these are not easy to answer quickly, sir. We're not questioning the AG's findings. We're questioning the inputs. If the AG wasn't given the proper inputs, then she wouldn't be able to have the proper outputs. And I think everybody understands that. But we're not questioning her or her office at all. I want to be very clear about that. If the RCMP has something to investigate, both Mr. Utano and I feel they should be free to conduct their investigation. What we feel very strongly about is that the CBSA is trying to cover something up. They've doubled down, and they've created this false preliminary statement of falsehood just to basically destroy our credibility. They shared it with our employers when it clearly wasn't ready. There's clearly facts within it that are just so false and incorrect. It's unbelievable, and that's what we have a problem with. That's why we went to the courts, Mr. Bachrach. Just to be clear, we're not asking for the investigation to go away. We're asking for an independent investigation because we don't believe the CBSA is capable of doing one. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We have Mr. Barrett and then Ms. Atwin. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
In response to a previous question, you said the app cost $6.3 million. Was that at the conclusion of your time at CBSA, or are you saying that that's the cost of the app?
Thank you for the question. That wasn't the answer I was trying to give for the cost of the app. The $6.3 million was the aggregate costs that I was tracking over the first year, which is what the OAG put in her report.
Increased by tenfold in the following year.
It increased
to $54 million and then to at least $60 million by the Auditor General's accounting.
I think from the Auditor General's accounting, from what I recall, and I'm using rough numbers, was it went from 6.3 to 25 to 25. And I say that, and I know that doesn't add up to 60, but it adds up to pretty close. So whether it was 27 or 28,
right.
But yeah.
So the app cost $60 million.
I would say the program of ArriveCan.
The question is, sir, do you disagree with the Auditor General's findings that ArriveCan cost $60 million? Do you agree, yes or no?
I agree that the costs that she tracked were
$60 million.
$60 million, yes.
Do you think taxpayers got good value for money with this app? It's a pretty straightforward question.
I think that what we were looking at when we were building it while I was there was how we could keep airports having people move through, how we could get provinces and territories.
Do you think it's good value for money for the 10,000 people who were at least 10,000 who were wrongly quarantined for 14 days, placed under house arrest under threat of jail? Do you think that they think it's good value for money?
Quarantine didn't even exist when I left, and I guess I would say that through that question, you can see the complexity of what got created in
right
in the decisions that were made by FAC and CBSA and
a very expensive product that failed Canadians in a terrible, terrible way. In your opening statement, you said you believed that people were being extorted for government contracts. Who? Just the name, please. Who is being extorted?
Go ahead.
I can answer that. What we said, and it's not what we said, it's what CBSA said, that the services for sharing the misconduct report was in exchange for contract services. And for participating in the interview...
Looking for the name, sir.
Ratika Dutt and Amir Morajev are the owners of Bottler. They are the ones who put in the allegations initially. They sent them to Aaron O'Gorman and leadership.
Okay.
And then they asked for a contract to be able to give the misconduct report and another contract
what tech
to
would
participate.
GC Strategies have been able to showcase in the bake-off that you mentioned?
Thank you for the question. I wasn't there and I'm not 100% certain, but I believe there was a company in Ottawa that they partnered with that was huge into data and analytics and had done some work at Transport Canada. And so there were two companies, and I think they showcased what they were capable of doing and what they had done before.
Raise red flags that you have a company there showing off another company. So if GC Strategies was making 30% on $20 million, which, as I pointed out yesterday, with some quick math, is enough to hire 10 full-time public servants for 25 years, that $20 million contract. So GC Strategies making 30% on a $20 million contract to make introductions. The introduction was made. These guys are using Google searches. Did no one see that using a company, a middleman that's cutting 30% off this, did no one see that was insane?
Maybe I can opine in here. So with respect to skill sets and the costs, we are the public service and servants are not Lego pieces or interchangeably used in the same way. For example, we did reach out to CDS, which is the Canadian Digital Services, looking to leverage a program where we would bring in expertise. The annual cost would have been $400,000 per person, plus the EBPs, the employee benefits. The skill sets are not interchangeable or...
We're out of time there. Who has deleted records related to ArriveCan?
So The reports that we've seen in the media have pointed to.
Do you know of
Mindone.
anyone? Can you assert? And if you can assert that anyone has deleted records, I just need the name.
Yeah.
I'm very short on time. Just a name.
Mindone has deleted emails, and we did not have our accounts locked down until after we testified, and we are very concerned that our emails have been deleted because they won't give us records of who's accessed our emails.
So would you say this is a cover-up?
I believe there's the potential for it, and all we've been trying
Why?
to do is
Why-
seek
why-
justice
why-
and fairness and
Why
transparency.
do you think that there's a cover-up?
It's a great question, and we want to know as well. And we've been asking for
I-
information and
If we
disclosure.
have the time, I told you guys about Mindone threatening me, and nobody did anything. Kelly Belanger was nowhere to be found in the OAG, keeps on saying that there was a lack of project management. Her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting young girls, got convicted and went to jail, and she wasn't around. I had been asked, and Mr. Utano had been asked to help her out while she was gone for family problems. Erin O'Gorman didn't do anything when she found out that I was threatened. Mr. Doan had threatened somebody else and been docked pay, so she knew there was a pattern of this behavior. Like, when we talk about why there would be a reason or a separation, I never had any problems when I was at the CBSA. I got asked to go to Health Canada because of my record at the CBSA and my record previous to it. So I don't know. Neither does Mr. Utano, who had a spotless record. We're just trying to get the right information. We're trying to have transparency. And now, after everything that's happened, we want independence from what the CBSA has done.
Because you don't trust the Trudeau government
That is-
to review their own scandal.
That is our time, gentlemen. Thanks very much. Ms. Atwin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just right off the top, for Mr. Utano and Mr. McDonald, are you able to table the communications between you and your lawyers and CBSA regarding the claim you made, the claim that you would meet with investigators?
So not barring any disruption with respect to solicitor privilege, we can take that back and take a look at it for sure.
Okay. And I've got an article here. It's from the Globe and Mail. Our media friends have been following this very closely. And so this is from an October 4th article entitled RCMP Probes Alleged Misconduct in Outsourced CBSA Contract. And this is a quote from it. Those recorded conversations show Mr. McDonald directed Bottler in February 2020 to please work with Christian and let Christian work his magic. The conversations also reveal that Mr. Firth described Mr. McDonald in November 2019 as a friend and said, I've been with him his whole career in the government. Mr. Firth referred to various senior public servants as friends. Mr. Firth also urged the two Bottler entrepreneurs to single out Mr. McDonald for praise when meeting with other senior government officials. So, Mr. McDonald, do you have a response to that? How did you feel reading that in the media, and how would you characterize that as truthful?
I would characterize it not as truthful at all, and cherry-picked information from Bottler, who was apparently recording everything that everybody does and then decides to put in misconduct reports 2 years after their failed business dealings. Number one, I don't think the member was here when I first testified, but I did explain, and I went through a whole critical path of timelines. I held up a big piece of paper and I explained that when Bottler says that I tried to pressure them, there was no chance that that could be the case because, number one, I wasn't the client. Number two, the decision to go ahead with Bottler didn't happen for almost another year after that. Number two, in terms of Mr. Firth knowing me my entire career, it's false. He clarified that he knew me his entire career, and I've already explained the timelines and dates of when I knew Mr. Firth, and we didn't have a close personal relationship whatsoever. I've met him 3 times out of an office, and half of that was during a pandemic when you couldn't go into an office in the first place. In terms of singling me out, because I'm trying to answer your question very, very directly, I don't know why Mr. Firth would do that. I didn't ask him to do that, certainly. I wasn't part of that conversation. I wasn't videotaped or recorded or whatever that is that Bottler does as part of that. And I won't speculate, but I never asked Mr. Firth to do anything. And, it's unfortunate, and I didn't like it at all. And I think the reporter's aware that I didn't appreciate the report. But it happened, and I'm dealing with it as best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And the reason I started with that was because that's really what's initiated so much of these past few months in our committee testimony and hearings. And so, was there misconduct in the procurement process? As far as you know, under you, at CBSA during the time for the ArriveCAN development?
Thank you very much. If we start with the Bottler allegations, I believe PSPC has reviewed this. I believe they did a legal assessment and they told Bottler that this was a private sector matter. And I believe CBSA, through Bottler's own testimony, told Bottler the same thing. So I hope that clears that up. With respect to the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombudsman report, with respect to my time and tenure at the CBSA, I don't think I was named as having done anything wrong. I don't think any public servants from the Procurement Ombudsman were named as doing anything wrong. So I don't know of any wrongdoing. I certainly did not witness any, and I wouldn't have stood for it if I had have seen it. But frankly, maybe I'll pass it to Mr. Utano for the other 2 years that ArriveCAN was there. But from what I understand and the reviews that were done, there were some questions between Contract 1 and Contract 2. I've clearly stated we were responsible for Contract 1. Contract 2 was the justification was written by the business. It was signed off by the CFO. It got sent over to PSPC and was signed off, indicating that they already had a contractor in mind for that work. Contract 3 would make no sense to go with a different vendor. As I explained, it doesn't make sense to hire a different plumber to do more work in your bathroom than you originally engaged, but PSPC did insist on a new contract. So I'll leave it at that because that was the only thing I was there for. Mr. Utano?
Thanks. So I did not witness any sort of misconduct. I want to make a comment on the Bottler, and as I said in my opening statements, what's concerning to me is the ask for a contract services in exchange for a misconduct report, and then an ask for a contract in exchange for participating in an investigation. For me, that's what raises a lot of red flags. As far as authorities, I'll say it again: we were not the contracting authorities, but the technical delivery technical authorities. We also put in place systems and checks and balances. And I want to reiterate, because I heard a comment about a shadow procurement. Let me be very clear. There was no such thing. There was no shadow procurement. It was impossible to actually even create that. You need 6 people to turn the key at the same time for any sort of contract to be let. We had an internal team who was taking in requests. We had CBSA procurement and PSPC as the overall government authority. We also had I don't have evidence for you, but and this was omitted. This is what's concerning me, is that it was the omissions of data and papers that is what's I'm questioning. You'll see that there was monthly, weekly.
I have to get you to wrap up, Mr.
Meetings with procurement.
Mr. Chair, please.
Thank you.
Just if the member would permit, there is a distinction that needs to be made between a technical authority and a contracting authority. And when we testified last time, because you brought up the media, I brought this up. The Bottler allegations kept on calling us the contracting authorities. We did not have those authorities. We could not sign for contracts, and we could not implement things that had a cost to the government. We could, however, sign for scope. And there's a very big difference, and I think it shows the naivete of the people who made the allegations in the first place and what caused the snowball to roll. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Atwin. Colleagues, as you're aware, we've been letting everyone run a bit long, and that's partly because we've got a long meeting today, and I sense there's a lot of important questions. But we're down to our final 2 rounds, so I have to keep everyone, in order to be done on time, to their exact time. So if you could be aware of that, please. Mr. Garnett, of course, is saying after him, but no. Just be cognizant of your time, please, because we need to stick to it. Mr. Generous, go ahead, please.
We've had multiple witnesses reluctant to appear, citing health issues. This is a serious and repeat problem for us as we try to get to the bottom of this scandal. Mr. McDonald, you referenced in passing someone having a fake heart attack, which is quite a serious allegation. I wonder if you'd be willing to flesh that out a little bit. Who did this, when, and for what purpose?
Well, the reason why I say that is after Mindone threatened me, I reported his threat to my supervisor, who called over to Ted Gallivan and talked to the executive vice president at the CBSA. I don't know what their discussion entailed. I only know that the feedback that I heard was that it seemed likely, because of behaviors of Mindone, that Mindone would be going on sick leave. Within a week and a half, this is prior to OGO happening, Mr. Doan went on sick leave. And I got a text message from Kelly Belanger saying, Min is in the hospital. having his heart checked, he really wanted me to say thank you for the message that you sent, the one that got me in so much trouble with the reporter because I had sent him notes on what he should say at OGO. Then miraculously, he comes back to work, moves over to Treasury Board, and gets promoted to the Chief Technology Officer. That certainly couldn't be less of a stressful job than he was in before if he had heart problems. And then we have OGO coming up again, and I'm under the understanding that Mr. Doan again is now on medical leave and can't participate. So I can tell you that I'm not going to disclose my medical issues, but I got a doctor's note for 7 months from my family doctor who's known me since I was 8 months old. And I'm still coming here because it's a matter of integrity and it's a matter of importance for me and my children, my wife and my family to know that I'll stick up for myself and that I'll tell the truth.
Thank you. We'll persist in challenging all aspects of your testimony, but we do appreciate that you are here when others have not chosen to come, and we've had to go to quite lengths to get them to come. You allege that Bottler received a contract in exchange for making certain allegations. Is that correct? Is that what?
Yep, go ahead.
So just for clarity, we didn't say that. CBSA said that.
Okay. You've talked in the context of this situation about Ms. O'Gorman, Mr. Osowski, Mr. Doan, but you've also referenced leadership in a somewhat sort of oblique way. Is the implication that there were higher ups involved in these conversations with Bottler, people at the political level, people at PCO? Is it beyond those three people?
Yeah, well, I mean, our life has been pretty much turned upside down, and we've been trying to figure things out. There's not a lot of people that are giving us information, but through our discovery, we can tell you that Bottler was very close with Minister Miller. They even knew his chief of staff by name and waved to her in an interview. We know that they sat at the top of Justice Canada, and they were given a seat at the table with the top of Justice Canada. We know that Amir Morajev was in videos with Justin Trudeau, and we know that he was part of speaking engagement on AI that Justin Trudeau was kind of the guest speaker of. So I don't know, from my vantage point, I don't know who my MP's chief of staff is by name, but yeah, when they say leadership, it either means the clerk of the Privy Council or politicians, in my view.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
I just also want to highlight that through an ATIP, we found an email directly from Ratika Dutt to the President Osowski in March
8th, after we started the feasibility study.
Unbeknownst to us, there was some other dealings going on in partnering with some other project. We don't have the details. Mr. McDonald or myself were unaware of this, but through ATIPs, we discovered that there was direct conversations right to the top and working on other initiatives.
Right to the top being?
I can confirm.
It basically says that the Minister of Justice had already approved a scope for work that had nothing to do with the feasibility study. So,
I just note, of course, we heard recently that if the Information Commissioner has concerns about information not being provided in a criminal way, she refers that to the Attorney General, who is the same person, the Justice Minister, who apparently has these relationships. Are you concerned regarding the Prime Minister that we have an internal investigation subject to the existing chain of command, that the Prime Minister sits effectively at the top of that chain of command? Are you concerned about the risk of political involvement?
Yes or no question, gentlemen. We're out of time.
I'd rather not weigh into that. That's way too political for anything that I'm involved with. I'm concerned that we're not getting a fair fight and that information is being withheld that would allow us to defend ourselves from these egregious allegations.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Generous. Mr. Baines, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, I just want to go back to the Bottler there. Did you ask Bottler to develop a pilot or do any other IT work?
For the question, so this is the ironic part about Mr. Lafleur being the lead investigator. Mr. Lafleur was actually part of the vetting process of Bottler where we decided on scope. The initial proposal was for them to do a feasibility study with 6 milestones and do a small regional pilot. HR and security decided against doing the pilot, which is why prior you'll see emails from me to Ratika Dutt saying we want to do all of this. It was after their demo and the president's decision that HR came back and said we only want to do the feasibility study. So that was what was contracted. It was after the kickoff that Ratika Dutt wrote to John Izowski directly. She didn't include myself or Mr. Utano, and said, hey, Justice Canada has approved this pilot. We want CBSA to take it on. And this is where they would monetize their Bottler for Citizens to move into a Bottler for Workplace. And I think this is why where they testified that they were going to make $28 million a year across the government. It was because they were trying to position their tool to be able to be one for internal government workplaces, and they would get paid on licensing.
And that was in the HR department, CBSA's HR department?
She wrote directly to the president of the CBSA, John Izowski, even though he testified that he had no contact with her after the initial presentation. The ATIP doesn't lie.
Okay, so they didn't do any work on the ArriveCAN or...
No.
So what actual work did they do?
That's the funny part. If you look at their complaints and you look at their reporting, they did a lot of work. They were building things, they were building tools, they were doing configuration. They were hired to build 6 documents as part of a feasibility study, and that's it. We never hired them to do anything more. If they engaged President Izowski and had approval from Justice to do some type of public safety pilot or work and configuration, it had nothing to do with the contracting that we had, and we were not aware of it whatsoever. Which is why we've been so vehemently...
We're under the impression they didn't do any work, they didn't get paid out. Mm-hmm. That was previous testimony. So, you know, I mean, considering all the relationships you indicated there with that they have, that they didn't end up with anything, did they?
Well, our understanding is that they got paid for 2 of the 6 milestones, but frankly, they testified here that they didn't know who Dalian and Karadix are, but they used Dalian and Karadix to obtain a line of credit so that they could build stuff. But the building wasn't part of the pilot, it wasn't part of the feasibility study. So this is where Antonio and I are completely confused as to where Bottler got direction from, who they were working with, because it certainly wasn't us. The scope from us was a feasibility study.
And if I can just add, and I don't have evidence, but I think there was an assumption from Bottler AI that Mr. McDonald and I were aware of this other initiative that was going on, but we were not. It was unbeknownst to us. We were not part of those email chains. And so when HR, Human Resources, asked us to stop, I'm calling it Project 1, the feasibility study. They're the client. We stopped it. But what happened, I think, inadvertently, is that we caused issues with this other project that we were not aware of. Explains why I think Bottler is so angry.
Okay, and you feel they've misled the committee?
100%. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you suggested that Mr. Doan was not permitted by his seniors to select Deloitte for ArriveCAN because it was in the penalty box. I think you alluded to that again today, which you speculated was due to risk management project called the CARM project. So Mr. Doan stated that this decision was more likely due to Deloitte's lack of cloud capability, while Mr. Izowski did not recall directing anyone not to work with Deloitte. So again, and I asked Mr. Doan specifically, who made the decision? I think we've come to the point that he made the decision on ArriveCAN, right? I think we've uncovered that. But so if you can shed some light on that piece there, insight on why Deloitte was not selected for ArriveCAN.
I thank the member, and I know that Mr. Jowry is familiar with management consulting and IT. I welcome any member here to look at the 2 options that we provided as evidence. Nowhere in the Deloitte option does it talk about Deloitte's cloud. And nowhere in the Deloitte option does it talk about a completely outsourced option. And on the other option, where Min Doan told this committee that there were no logos, there were no anything, there was a logo. It was Distill Mobile, which was subcontracted through GC Strategies. So I maintain that I was told, and so was the former chief data officer, that Deloitte was out of bounds, that they were in the penalty box because the CARM project was in the red, and that's the truth. But it's also verifiable. I've already given this committee the names of people who can verify.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I'm afraid we have to move forward. Mrs. Bignola, please, for 2.5.
Donc, merci.
Thank you for putting in your earpieces. So I'll ask my earlier question, which remained unanswered. The CBSA, should it be put under trusteeship or administration, i.e. under some kind of supervision, in order to tidy up their house and address what isn't currently working?
C'est une très bonne question.
It was a good question. I have some ideas, but I don't think I'm the person who's best placed to say yes, yay or nay to your question. Evidently, there are serious issues at play that need to be addressed. And as I said, they're very serious issues. Now, despite the President's testimony and that of other officials from the CBSA, with my perspective, I can't see or understand the targets or the steps that they are actually taking with a view to addressing these issues. So it's not up to me to say yeah or nay to your question. I think it's a good question. And I think that it would behoove you to ask that specific question of someone who has more experience in the field than I do.
Si je comprends.
If I've understood correctly, everything that started this whole issue about Butler AI, the pilot that wasn't in fact a pilot project, there seems to be some kind of confusion, conflation about the roles of various stakeholders. Now, I can wrap my head around some things, but I get the sense that it's perhaps your line of defence, and it's a reasonable line of defence, that they're trying to sow doubt vis-a-vis Butler AI's complaint. Is that the case? Is that happening?
Very, very brief answer, gentlemen.
Do you want to go?
We doubt with respect to what CBSA told in the terms and conditions that they put on the table to participate in the investigation and share the report. The other thing that's concerning them is that we have been asking for disclosure of these original allegations, and we still have not yet to receive them. There are others that we believe there are others in that letter that we have not yet become aware of.
Thank you very much. I have to move on. Mr. Bachrach, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to return to the somewhat astounding statement that Mr. Drouin had suffered a, quote, fake heart attack. I don't think any of us would want such statements being made about our personal health in such a public forum. I'm just wondering, Mr. McDonald, do you have any medical expertise that would allow you to make that statement before committee?
Thanks for the question, and perhaps I said something I shouldn't. Although what I do have is a Reddit article from a public servant who was with Mr. Doan a week before his testimony, where they said he was drunk on his butt and telling jokes and talking about ArriveCan vulnerabilities. So if somebody was that close to a heart attack, I do have a little bit of medical knowledge. I don't think that they should probably be drinking to the point of being drunk on their butt. So I made the statement. If it's disrespectful, I take it back, and I apologize to Mr. Drouin for making it in full, without reservation.
I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any dispute, Mr. Chair, that it was disrespectful. The question was whether it's a fact. And you seem to have taken great umbrage, Mr. McDonald, at other people making statements that are not factual when they involve you. And yet you've made a statement that I don't believe is supported by fact concerning Mr. Drouin. What are we to make of this? Is this appropriate given the context of this fact-finding exercise that we're participating in right now?
Well, frankly, I just apologized, and I removed, or I tried to rescind my comment, and I unreservedly apologize for making it. So if I can't do anything more than that, move forward.
Fair enough. Mr. Chair, do I have a few more seconds here for another question?
How 30 seconds, sir.
Okay. Going back to the CBSA investigation and your reluctance to participate in it, without CBSA disclosing information prior to your participation. Do you know if it's CBSA policy to disclose information to interviewees prior to their interview?
Maybe I can answer that. So we have not refused to participate. In fact, it was the absolute reverse. Second, the investigator was aware that we were on medical leave when it was originally asked. Third, what is against policy is not maintaining continuity of evidence and articulating that and sharing that information. Third, I think disclosure is part of fairness and transparency, and that is part of the policy under the Treasury Board Secretariat.
Yeah, that is our time. We're going to Ms. Block and then Mr. Jawari.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to circle back to what actually brought us to today's meeting, go back to the fact that the subject of our study is ArriveCan, and notwithstanding your desire or your wish that Canadians would understand the challenges and the great work that was done on ArriveCan, I think what is incredibly egregious to Canadians is the awarding of a contract to a two-person firm working out of their basement who had no IT experience and did no IT work. In fact, both the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombudsman raised serious concerns about this contract to GC Strategies. The Procurement Ombudsman stated that the requirements for that third contract were overly restrictive, such that only GC Strategies could win the contract. And the Auditor General, in fact, revealed that they were at the table when the requirements were being created. Now, I know in your testimony you've said that you're technical authority, not contracting authorities, that what you do is sign for scope. And I need to understand that, because while you have stated, and you stated it on November 7th, that you were never in a position to put contracts in place and make contracting decisions, you did sign off on funding and the scope. And my question to you is, while you didn't have the ability to execute, did you have the ability to influence the scope and the request for proposals, in that you were defining what was needed? And were either of you involved in the discussions for the development of the requirements for this final contract with GC Strategies?
Yeah. So maybe I'll take that one, because Mr. McDonald was gone by that time. What I can confirm is that I was not involved in the development of that contract or RFP, the request for proposal. I was not involved in the requirements. There's a separate teams of people who are involved in developing that. So I haven't. I'm sorry.
Answered my question. Okay. You were not involved. I have another follow-up question. Where was the CFO in all of this? Again, in your testimony on November 7th, Mr. McDonald, you stated that the CFO is the contracting authority and are responsible for expediting contracts. So when all of this was taking place, where was the CFO?
Well, I mean, initially the CFO was at the table. What we were not discussing was dollars and cents every meeting, but every week we would be in front of deputies, in front of FAC, and showing them screens about what was to be delivered. Most VPs were at the table with us. When we needed funding to be able to put something in place, the CFO's organization would be the one to approve it and endorse it. And then it would be the CFO's procurement organization at the time it was a place called Controllership, who would do the reviews of all of the contracting and see what was going on. So at the EC table, which is the president and the VPs, there are at a minimum quarterly reviews of expenditures and forecasts and everything that's going on. So it'd be more appropriate to ask the CFO and his team, frankly. I mean, he's got a large team that support him, what was going on and where they were. But certainly they were aware that we were putting in place contracts. He was the one that sent the NSC over to PSPC. And certainly as we are expending funds, we continued the financial cycle. I reported when I left, I knew it was $6.3 million because I was tracking all of my expenditures. So those were all going to the CFO's organization to be rolled up in aggregate as part of the agency's overall financial position.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I don't want to leave the committee with the sense that there was no discussions or governance. There was. The reason why we were working 12 to 16-hour days was that there was ongoing meetings throughout every day, 3, 4, 5 times a week, usually 3 to 4 times a day. Everything from low-level technical to working with PHAC and their seniors and our seniors. There was so much going on, and it was a busy time. I just want to make it clear, everybody was aware of what was happening. Decisions were being made at the most senior levels, and they were aware of the costing.
And yet the Auditor General found that there was glaring mismanagement, a waste of taxpayers' dollars, and not enough evidence to be able to determine the cost of ArriveCan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Jory. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. McDonald, am I right to understand in one of your responses you talked about the fact that the Prime Minister in his response in an interview implicated you, Mr. Utano, and passed a judgment on an ongoing investigation? Did I understand that correctly?
That's it. So we can go back to the opening comments, but the Prime Minister opining in on this, it felt like it was, yes, directed at us.
Okay, so let me read what I have been able to secure in the last hour. And I quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Tuesday, it's obvious contracting rules were not followed during the development of the controversial ArriveCan app. The Prime Minister called the application controversial and has said the rules were not followed. And that is something that's directly out of the AG's report. And in no ways it implicates you or Mr. Utano. Trudeau said that while the app was developed at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, such projects still need to follow rules, even in difficult times. And this is exactly following what AG report also highlighted, and no way implicates you or Mr. McDonald. He said investigations are ongoing, and there will be consequences in cases of public servant failing to abide by the rules. So he did not specifically talk about any investigation. We all know or are aware of one that has to do with the CBSA, and the other one, what we have heard is from RCMP, and he's saying any public servant failing to abide by that rule will be punished, and nowhere it mentions you. What led you to believe that any of those three statements, which is basically on media available, is in any way implicating you or Mr. McDonald?
So I'll go first. The PSFs were shared with the OAG. The PSFs are based on allegations, unfounded, untested, without context, and even say no evidence. So what's leading me to
Prime Minister
say
never referred to anything of those. So why would you felt that it was done?
The reason why, sir, if you watch the video, the question came based upon two public servants being suspended. I'm not aware of any other public servants being targeted by the CBSA. I'm not aware of the CBSA or the OAG or any other member of PSBC. Actually, I think PSBC answered at Public Accounts this week that nobody has gotten in any trouble for anything that's happened. So I don't think I don't think it's a stretch to think that the Prime Minister was referring to us when the question and the genesis of it came down to the fact that there were two public servants that had been suspended from their job.
Well, first of all, Prime Minister never referred to two public servants. He talked about public servants, and there are many public servants are being that. So I think that is a little bit of a stretch. Let's go back to the evaluation. Thank you very much for tracking the cost that you did for the year that you were there. At least we have a base to start with. Auditor General also said that this application could have cost as much as about $60 million. We also heard that the processing of paper application or paper process would have been around $3. At 40 million transaction at $3, it's about $120 million. If it's 60 million application, that's $180 million. Just from a cost avoidance, not valuation, from a cost avoidance, even if this application was topped at $60 million, we avoid potentially twice or three times the cost that the government would have incurred. So if we look at from a cost avoidance, there was some value. But I'll ask you as a technical person, if there was an e-commerce application that had 18 million users and had anywhere from 40 to 60 million transactions within 2 years and helped facilitate transaction of goods in the billions of dollars, if we wanted to raise fund for that application and market, what would it be valued at?
Brief answer, please.
It sounds like the member's actually questioning the OAG's report more than we are. I think, frankly, we were looking forward to a section in the OAG's report about cost avoidance, if not cost savings, with respect to paper. It wasn't there. I don't question the OAG or her decisions. I just respect the fact that there was a cost to paper, and the app removed that. So I agree with Mr.
Yeah. How much would it cost? Would it cost 100? Would it be valued at 100 million, 200 million, 300 million?
We're past our time, Mr. Jawari. If you have a very 2-second answer, please.
I wouldn't. I'm not a valuation specialist, so it would be worth more than 60 million.
Okay. Thanks very much. We'll now go to our final round. Mr. Brock, please, for 5.
Thanks, Chair. In her report, the Auditor General states as follows: the CBSA's documentation, financial records, and controls were so poor that they were unable to determine the precise cost of the ArriveCAN application. She further stated and opined that in her multiple decades of service to this country, in the role of the AG as well as her audit work, she has never seen such worse record keeping in her life that was attributable to the CBSA. Were the two of you responsible for poor record keeping, yes or no?
We did not have information management responsibilities, especially with respect to project management.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Utano?
No, we were not responsible for
Thank
overall
you.
financial.
We all know Mr. Mindone, the Vice President, is alleged to have miraculously have 4 years worth of relevant emails that have disappeared, either by corruption or by intentional deletion. Approximately 4 years worth of emails. There has been some suggestion that represents roughly 1,700 emails. Is that figure accurate, or is it much higher?
The figure would be much higher, would be in the tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Do you believe, sir, that there is an effort by political officials and senior management at CBSA and other departments to destroy incriminatory and problematic documents related to ArriveCAN? Yes or no?
I would have no knowledge of anything political, but it would seem to me that based on the state of affairs and observations by the AG, I can only assume that there's no way public servants would behave in such a reckless manner. It's just impossible.
Thank you. Mr. Utalo, your views?
I think I just want to opine in. There's a concerted effort of holding back information, and that's what's concerning, whether it's through their ATIPs, through access in the internal investigation, or what we're being alleged to. It's all being held back, and that's what's concerning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ceding my time to Mr. Genuis.
You have 3 minutes, Mr. Genuis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony. It's very concerning, all the different things that we're hearing, and I'm particularly concerned about the problems with the just all the different allegations as part of this issue, and I think we need to ensure there's a proper and thorough investigation. With that in mind, Chair, I would like to move a motion in relation to a proper investigation, and the motion is as follows: that the committee report to the House it's asked that the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner of Canada investigate all the allegations of wrongdoing related to ArriveCAN and report to the House by October 1st, 2024. So Chair, this I think would allow for the important investigation. We need to have independent investigation from the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner of Canada to get to the bottom of some of these allegations. And this would be an investigation by an officer of Parliament that is not at risk of interference, that is not subject to the internal chain of command. So I hope that there would be support of the committee for this very simple proposal to ask the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner of Canada to investigate these allegations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Generous. I understand the clerk has it and he's sending it out to everyone right now. So you'll have it. I'll start a speaking list. Mr. Jory?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we are going to receive this motion, at least this is a much shorter motion that we could really keep a focus on. So, am I right to understand that now we are asking a fourth independent group to launch an investigation? So. AG has completed her investigation. It seemed there was a motion for us to go back and expand or launch another investigation much broader than that. I don't know where that's gone. We know there is an internal CBSA motion, the investigation that's going on. Through media and through others, we are led to believe that the open who the participants are now, we are asking for a fourth investigation to be launched. Wouldn't it be more logical for us to wait the outcome of the two, at least one that we know of and the other one that we believe we've heard that there is investigation going on, to get the result of that, to be able to assess whether a fourth investigation is required, because I don't know what really the base of such a request is, with all of these, with at least one known and another one alleged to be going on, without the outcome of being there. So are we going to now send another group task with getting to the bottom of this, which we welcome, and then extend the number of meetings that we're going to have at ArriveCan from unknown to extremely unknown, from somewhat we believe it's planned to completely unplanned, for the next going. So why do we need to have another investigation where the outcome of the ones that they are here, or they're ongoing and believed to be ongoing, is not out yet? So at this point, without those, I'm not supporting that motion.
Thank you, sir. Well, we've got Mr. Generous, then Mr. Brock, and then Mrs. Vignola.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to see that this may not be as simple as I thought it would be, but let me state, I think, what all members know, which is that there are different officers of Parliament, different organizations with very different mandates. So obviously we have the RCMP looking into criminal activity, allegations of criminal activity that I suspect we will hear from at some point. There's the Auditor General's report, but the Auditor General is acting as an auditor with specific scope to look at a set of things related to money, value for money, processes, etc. We have the Procurement Ombudsman report, which has a distinct mandate related to procurement, but the role of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner as an officer of Parliament to investigate wrongdoing, to investigate the clearly the allegations of problems in integrity as it relates to people in government. We have allegations of reprisals against public servants following their committee testimony, of the destruction of documents, of extortion happening. There are many serious allegations flying back and forth, senior public servants accusing each other of lying to parliamentary committees. These are very distinct issues related to integrity within government, and I think the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner has the right mandate to investigate those specific issues, and crucially has the advantage of independence. So we oppose efforts by some to bury this matter or to limit the scope of the investigations. There is a clear agenda, I think, on the part of the government to want to have this limited to an internal investigation, which ultimately they can control. But when we have an officer of Parliament responsible for making investigations into public sector integrity issues, I think that is a clear and appropriate way of getting to the bottom of this. And look, if we wait until other reports have complete before this process starting itself at all, then we're just continually pushing off actually getting to the truth on this. I think it is right and responsible for this committee to ask for the support of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner as an independent actor, as someone with credibility, and someone who will look at distinctly different issues from the other reports. So again, I hope that this motion will have the support of colleagues. It's a simple, straightforward motion. There's no extraneous commentary in the motion at all. I think it's something that all members should be able to support to allow proper investigation to take place.
Mr. Brock, then Mrs. Spignola.
Thank you, Chair.
Back to Mr. Chouari.
Thank you, Chair. Further to my colleagues' comments, which I agree absolutely in its content. I'm rather disappointed in Mr. Chouari for conflating a number of investigations and trying to establish some independence with respect to those investigations. We've heard about the internal investigation launched by the CBSA. We've heard evidence directly from the investigator that he in no way is truly independent. We've heard commentary from Mr. Utano and Mr. McDonald that they have rephrased the PSF to preliminary statement of falsehood and not fact. All committee members should remember my opening line of questions to Mr. Lafleur, where I challenged him on the basis that he is establishing conclusions on a preliminary basis, and perhaps he should have rebranded the report as allegations and not fact. There's a big difference between a proven fact and an allegation. He's clearly established that he reports to his supervisor, who ultimately reports to the deputy minister. So there's absolutely no independence. And what's more troubling, and these are the words of the former clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Warnock, with his decades of public service experience, he has never in his lifetime have ever heard of the mistreatment of these two public servants who, on a medical leave for some real legitimate issues related to threats, stress. We heard from Mr. McDonald back in November how he was threatened by complete strangers because he was essentially ostracized by Justin Trudeau's government and its officials, which is appalling on many levels. So we need to have someone who is truly independent to report to the House, taking a look at all the circumstances as to why the government and senior officials at CBSA has centered out these two individuals while on medical leave to suspend them without pay. According to Michael Warnock, there's no precedent for that type of administrative maneuver. And with the evidence that we have heard at this committee, it's abundantly clear that they are being scapegoated, that there are a number of people, senior members of the CBSA, and now potential ties to ministers. We've heard earlier this week that all the DMs were reporting to their minister throughout the implementation of the ArriveCan, and also to the clerk of the Privy Council, who is the ministry of the Prime Minister. So indeed, there is political interference and manipulation in this process that needs to be fully vetted. And if my colleague, Mr. Chouari, truly lived up to the mantra that Justin Trudeau pronounced during the 2015 election that this would be an open government. It would be a transparent government. It would be an accountable government. If he truly believed in those values, he would seek a completely independent investigation. So I will definitely be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Now, I understand the questions being posed by my colleague, Mr. Jahari, regarding the quantity of investigations that are currently underway. However, this particular investigation doesn't have to do with ArriveCAN specifically. It is to get to the bottom of things and to know what retaliation was levelled, and if indeed there was retaliation against officials and public servants after they appeared before this committee. That strikes me as quite reasonable. It's normal. We've just enacted legislation to protect whistleblowers, and yet, well, it's time to walk the talk, isn't it? Put our money where our mouth is. So if we are dealing with whistleblowers, then we need to protect them. And this investigation, in my humble opinion, is absolutely crucial to ensure that those individuals who must be protected are protected, that they aren't threatened in any way whatsoever. As we've seen in the case of Mr. Sabaran, when he was actually asking for help at many levels, including his Member of Parliament, and the only people that lifted a finger is Julie Vignola and one other person. So I'd ask you to think long and hard about this so you don't find yourselves on the wrong side of history. Everyone wants to get to the bottom of things. We want the truth. It needs to be the complete truth and nothing but the truth, the utter truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vignola. Mr. Jawari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, had we had the preamble and the reasoning for launching another investigation, and how the scope of this investigation varies from the other, and how it complements it, without the typical soapbox blaming the government around, transparency and all of those things, and going partisan, it would have been a much better start to be able to put it. Once again, had we had this motion prepared and sent to us, and we had an opportunity to be able to talk about it, would have leveled it better. What I like to suggest that given the fact that the scope of this investigation seems now clear to be different and worthy and complementary to the others, I'd like to say that we fully support the Public Sector Integrity Commission investigating this matter, but probably and perhaps it would be a good idea for the committee, through the chair, to send a letter to the PSIC asking whether they're actually investigating, and if they are, is there any timeline to bring on that? And I will not dignify the comments that my other colleague, Mr. Brock, has made around that our government is not transparent, is not accountable, and dating back to the platform in 2015 and the Prime Minister talking about an open government. What Mr. Brock forgot about is that we also said we will hold high level of integrity. And this is where we are trying to find that balance between integrity as well as openness, etc. And I strongly suggest we come off our soapbox and start focusing on getting to the bottom of this and stop the rhetorics. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. We've got Mr. Kusmirchuk, then Mr. Sousa, then Mr. Janus. Keeping in mind,
I was going to say, I
keeping in mind our resources.
Yes, I will make this very quick. I too support the motion to ask the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner if they are conducting a an investigation already. I support them getting involved for some of the reasons that were already spelled out. There absolutely seems to be a conflict, counter accusations between public sector employees. This almost feels like a street fight between public servants. And we also heard testimony as well too from one of those that they felt that they didn't receive some of the protections that they believe that they required for sharing their information and testimony. And so I do feel that that it is right to bring into this discussion and investigation the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner. I do, however, agree with what my colleague had said on two things. One is that I do think that there is a step before to ask whether an investigation is already being conducted. And the reason I ask that is because we have to be careful about those are independent bodies. They are independent actors, the commissioner. They're independent of any political pressure. And so I want to make sure that we're careful of that in terms of being seen as influencing them in any way. So I do think it'd be proper to ask whether they are already conducting an investigation. They may actually have information to bring to light that's important. But then the other thing I just wanted to emphasize, and again, I've been saying this for the last number of weeks, really appreciate it if the members around our table would cool the rhetoric, the political sort of mudslinging and basically preening for the cameras just to get clips so that we can stick to the facts. This issue is too important. This issue is too important. The integrity of the procurement process, but also the confidence in our public service and public sector is important. And I would just ask my colleagues around the table to cool it with the rhetoric and the mudslinging. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's Mr. Sousa, then Mr. Genuis, and then Mr. Bachrach, I see.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to reiterate the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner, even by its name, is all about maintaining integrity. And certainly it's not up to public officials to direct these independent bodies to do their job. They've already identified that they have the independence to do so in order to maintain integrity. And I mean, we've heard from the Auditor General, the Ombudsman, the Information Commissioner, all of whom have a duty and a responsibility, and they take great pride in ensuring that they're not interfered in regards to the work they do. So let's maintain that integrity, as we should be maintaining that integrity throughout these committee hearings. Even today's overall discussions have an impact on this very issue to maintain integrity in the investigation by sharing information and so forth that were confidential in the first place. So I want to reiterate that I think our first step is to ask the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner if, in fact, they may be already investigating. If that's the case, let's find out before we proceed to make a motion. To direct them, that should be.
Thanks, Mr. Sousa, Mr. Genuis, and then Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, it seems that members of the government would prefer if the official opposition took a more tender approach in our discharge of our functions. That's something that we'll discuss among ourselves and report back regarding our conclusions. But unless I misunderstood, it seems like there's agreement on the proposal I put forward. So we're ready to proceed in due course.
Mr. Bachrach, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also agree that having the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner conduct an independent investigation is well warranted based on what the committee's heard to date. I don't believe it's necessary for the committee to first ask the Commissioner if an investigation is already underway. And I don't believe that passing this motion would in any way compromise the independence of an investigation, nor would it interfere with the fact that an investigation may have already begun. An investigation by the Commissioner, I believe, would be substantively different from the inquiries that have already taken place. The Auditor General focused on the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of the procurement around ArriveCan. The RCMP is looking into the potential for criminality. And of course, the CBSA's review is an internal review. And as has been established already before a committee is not entirely independent. And I think given the severity of the allegations, given the fact that there are disputes over what has taken place, having the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner conduct a full and independent investigation is certainly an appropriate step at this point. And I agree with my colleague that it seems that we have a direction as a committee, and I would hope that we can now move to a vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Bachrach. I was just going to suggest that we do seem to have the support of the Bloc, the NDP, the Conservatives, and general agreement from the government side. Are we able to agree to move on to this? To move forward with this? Mr. Sousa, you have your hands up? Perfect. So
I do. Yeah,
are you in agreement with everyone else? You're the only one not. Are you intending to speak on this, Mr. Sousa? Sorry. And I know it's tough because it's virtual.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to provide one more opportunity to provide a written submission to the Integrity Commissioner to ask if the matter, if it is being investigated, and whether the matter is within her jurisdiction, and whether such an investigation could be undertaken without compromising the ongoing investigation, CBSA and RCMP. I know what we're saying. I know the concerns. We want it, but at the same time, I want to make certain that we protect the ongoing investigations that are underway. I think we should hear from the Integrity Commissioner to reaffirm that and put it in the motion so that, yeah, okay, let's ask because we want to see it, but let's make certain that we protect the integrity of all of these investigations. I would like to put that into the motion if it's possible and agree to it. I don't think it hampers the motion. All it does is reaffirm that this will not compromise the integrity of ongoing investigations, in the opinion of the Public Security Commissioner.
Thanks, Mr. Sousa. Can we move to a vote, colleagues?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzmierczak?
Yeah, I actually, I think we're almost ready to vote, and I definitely call for a recorded vote on this. I think that's important, but I just wanted to ask, Mr. Sousa brings an interesting point forward, which is to actually bring the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner here to committee, so that we can have a conversation about this potential investigation if this falls within within her purview, and so. Maybe ask questions about her work and the process. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think we can do both of those things at once, but we would like a recorded vote on this. But I'd love to hear what other members of the committee feel about the testimony, bringing as a witness.
I think we'd be happy to call her as a witness. We can do both, call the vote, and then we can prioritize. We've got couple open days coming up, but we certainly invite her. It'd be wonderful to have her in, period, if that's the will of the committee. Perfect. I will take that as I'll find time to invite her. Can we go to a recorded vote? Perfect, sir.
Mr. Jarori.
Yes.
Ms. Hutwin.
In favor.
Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Mr. Kowarczyk.
Strongly, yes.
Mr. Sousa. Mr.
I can't hear.
Mr.
Oh,
Sousa.
yes.
Mr. Junius.
Yes.
Ms. Block.
Yes.
Mr. Brock.
Yes.
Madame Vignola.
Oui.
Mr. Backrush.
Yes.
All in favor.
All in favor, so adopted. Thank you, colleagues, very much. Mr. Kuzmierczak, thank you for that suggestion. Mr. Utano and Mr. McDonald, thank you for joining us again. We appreciate all your testimony. Colleagues, thank you for everyone's patience and allowing everyone to go over a bit. I think it was very important for a lot of the questions asked that we get proper answers. With that, unless there's anything else, we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
you.